Good day, lovely viewers. Welcome to Harry What Ifs. We have an exciting story lined up for you today. What if Tonks and Fleur both fell in love with Harry and fought to become his only queen? Your engagement means the world to us. Like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow and bring you more amazing content. Without wasting any time, let's start. Chapter 1, Unexpected Attractions. The spell whizzed past Harry's ear, missing him by inches. He ducked behind the crumbling wall, breathing hard. Remind me again why I agreed to lead this raid. Harry muttered, adjusting his grip on his wand. Because you're a glutton for punishment, Tonks called from her position across the abandoned warehouse. Even in the dim light, her bright purple hair stood out like a beacon. And because you're the best we've got, Potter. Harry grinned despite the danger. 3 years as an Auror had taught him to find humor in the worst situations. The intel had promised a small gathering of smugglers, maybe 5 wizards tops. Instead, they'd walked into an ambush of at least 15 dark wizards with itchy trigger fingers. Johnston, status report on the east exit. Harry called into his enchanted badge. Static crackled back. Sealed off, sir. They've got some kind of barrier charm I've never seen before. Harry swore under his breath. Wesley. Same on the north side. We're boxed in. A barrage of curses hit the wall Harry was using for cover, sending brick dust showering over his shoulders. This was going sideways fast. The 4 Aurors under his command were pinned down, outgunned, and running out of options. Harry caught Tonks' eye from across the room and they exchanged a silent look of understanding. 3 years as partners had given them an almost telepathic connection in the field. She nodded, morphing her features to match one of the smugglers they'd glimpsed earlier. Cover me, Harry mouthed. Without hesitation, Harry transfigured his aura robes to match the dark leather worn by their attackers and cast a quick disillusionment charm. Not perfect invisibility, but enough to create confusion in the chaos. He slipped from behind his cover, moving with practiced silence toward the center of the room where the leader barked orders. The air crackled with magic as Tonks created a spectacular diversion, a series of explosions near the west wall that drew all eyes away from Harry's position. Moving quickly, Harry stunned 2 wizards before they knew what hit them. We've got an infiltrator, someone shouted. Harry abandoned stealth for speed, firing off rapid stunning spells as he dodged between crates. A cutting curse caught his shoulder, slicing through his disguise and drawing blood, but adrenaline kept him moving. The leader, a tall wizard with a distinctive scar running down his face, turned toward Harry with alarming speed. Potter, he snarled, recognition flashing in his eyes. Harry barely raised a shield in time to deflect a curse that would have taken his head off. The magical impact drove him backward, his boots skidding on the concrete floor. You're outnumbered, Potter, Scarface taunted, advancing with his wand trained on Harry's chest. The famous boy who lived, cornered like a rat. Maybe, Harry replied, blood dripping down his arm. But your math's a bit off. Right on cue, Tonks dropped her disguise and took out 3 wizards with a sweeping hex from behind. The momentary distraction was all Harry needed. He feinted left, then rolled right, coming up with a non-verbal incarcerus that bound the leader in magical ropes before he could react. The tide turned quickly after that. With their leader captured, the remaining smugglers lost cohesion. 2 tried to disapparate and bounced off their own anti-transportation wards. Another made a break for a hidden door, only to be clotheslined by Johnston emerging from the shadows. 10 minutes later, Harry stood in the middle of the warehouse, surrounded by bound criminals and breathing hard. Blood soaked his torn sleeve, but satisfaction outweighed the pain. Not bad, boss, Tonks said, approaching with a lopsided grin. Her hair had shifted to a victorious bright blue. Though you cut it a bit close with that shield charm. Harry shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at his wound. Kept you on your toes, didn't I? Tonks rolled her eyes and grabbed his arm to examine the cut. Hold still, you idiot. This looks nasty. Her fingers were gentle against his skin as she muttered a quick healing spell. The bleeding stopped, though the wound was too deep to heal completely in the field. "Thanks," Harry said, suddenly aware of how close she was standing. Had her eyes always been that particular shade of hazel? She'd settled on her natural eye color recently, saying she was tired of changing herself for others. "Don't mention it," she replied, holding his gaze a beat longer than usual. Something unspoken passed between them, a current of awareness that hadn't been there before. "Someone's got to keep you in one piece." The moment broke when Wesley approached with the bound leader in tow. "Package secured, sir. Ready for transport to the ministry." Harry nodded, stepping away from Tonks with an inexplicable feeling of disappointment. "Good work everyone. Let's wrap this up and get these bastards processed." 2 hours later, Harry sat in head Aura Robards' office, his shoulder properly healed but still aching. His mission report lay on the desk between them. 15 dark wizards instead of 5, and you still brought them all in without casualties, Robards said, looking impressed despite himself. "Though the warehouse is practically demolished." Harry ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. The building was already condemned. And technically, Johnston sprained his wrist. Robards waved this away. "The point is, Potter, you turned a potential disaster into a major win. These aren't just smugglers, we've confirmed they're connected to this new movement out of Eastern Europe. The one led by Nikolai Volkov." Harry straightened in his chair. Everyone in magical law enforcement had been hearing whispers about Volkov for months. A former Durmstrang professor with radical ideas about magical supremacy and removing restrictions on dark magic. What were they smuggling that's connected to Volkov? "That's where it gets interesting," Robards said, pulling a file from his desk. "Ancient artifacts, mostly. Dark objects with specific magical signatures that our experts haven't fully identified. Gringotts is sending over a specialist to consult." "Gringotts?" Harry frowned. "Since when do the goblins care about dark wizard movements?" "Since these artifacts started disappearing from their high-security vaults across Europe. They've got a vested interest." Robards checked his watch. "Their expert should be here shortly for the debriefing. You and Tonks will work with them directly." Right on cue, a knock came at the door. Robards waved his wand to open it, revealing Tonks, who had changed into fresh robes and fixed her hair into a spiky purple style that somehow managed to look both professional and rebellious. "Reporting as ordered, sir," she said, then nodded to Harry with a small smile. "Looking better, Potter. The healers patch you up properly?" "Good as new," Harry replied. The casual banter felt normal, but something had shifted between them. He found himself noticing details about her he'd overlooked before, the way her smile tilted higher on the left, the light freckles across her nose that appeared when she wasn't morphing them away. A second knock interrupted his thoughts, and the door opened to reveal the last person Harry expected. Fleur Delacour stepped into the office with the graceful confidence he remembered from the Triwizard tournament. Her silvery blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek knot, and she wore the distinctive dark blue robes of Gringotts' security division. The years had matured her beauty from dazzling to something more sophisticated and controlled. "Harry?" Surprise lit her features before she composed herself. "I was not told you would be handling this case." "Fleur," Harry managed, standing abruptly. "I didn't know you were working for Gringotts security now." A small smile played at her lips. "For 2 years now. After Bill and I." She hesitated, then continued with professional detachment, "After our separation, I needed a fresh start. My work in curse-breaking led to ZE Security Division." Harry nodded, unsure what to say. He'd heard about her divorce from Bill last year, amicable according to Ron, but still a shock to those who'd witnessed their whirlwind romance during the war. Much like Tonks' separation from Remus had surprised everyone 6 months ago. Tonks cleared her throat. "I'm Aura Tonks. We met briefly during the war." "Of course," Fleur said, extending her hand. "Nymphadora, yes. Bill spoke of you often. Just Tonks, she corrected with a tight smile, shaking Fleur's hand briefly. Only my mother calls me Nymphadora. Robards, clearly sensing the sudden tension in the room, gestured to the chairs. Now that introductions are out of the way, let's get down to business. Potter, brief Ms. Delacour on what you found today. Harry slipped back into professional mode, detailing the raid and the dark artifacts they'd recovered. Fleur listened intently, occasionally asking sharp, insightful questions that revealed her expertise. Harry found himself impressed by her technical knowledge, a side of her he'd never gotten to know during their limited interactions years ago. "The artifacts you describe match patterns we've seen across Europe," Fleur said when he finished. "Specific magical signatures, all tied to amplification of power. Nikolai Volkov appears to be collecting items that enhance magical abilities beyond normal constraints. But to what end?" Tonks asked, leaning forward. Her knee brushed against Harry's under the table, and he felt an unexpected jolt at the contact. "That's what we need to find out," Robards interjected. "Which is why I'm assigning you three to work together on this. Potter, Tonks, you'll handle the investigation from the Auror side. Ms. Delacour will consult on the artifacts and provide Gringotts intelligence on similar cases." Harry glanced between Fleur and Tonks, suddenly aware he'd be spending a lot of time with two women who radiated very different but equally compelling energies. Tonks caught his eye and raised an eyebrow slightly, as if sensing his thoughts. "We should examine ZE artifacts immediately," Fleur suggested. "Before their magical signatures fade." "Agreed," Harry said, standing. "They're in the secure evidence room. I'll take you there." The three left Robards' office and headed down the ministry hallway. Harry found himself walking between the two women, acutely aware of Tonks' casual confidence on his left and Fleur's elegant poise on his right. Their footsteps echoed in unison on the marble floor. "So," Tonks said conversationally, breaking the slightly awkward silence, "how are you finding Gringotts compared to curse-breaking in the field, Fleur?" "Different challenges," Fleur replied. "Less physical danger, more political maneuvering. They goblins respect competence above all else, which suits me." Harry noticed how her accent had mellowed over the years, still present but less pronounced. She'd clearly worked to master English more fully. "And you, Harry?" Fleur turned those striking blue eyes toward him. "Is being an Auror everything you hoped?" Harry considered the question seriously. "Not exactly what I imagined as a kid, but it fits. Though I could do without the paperwork and politics." "Some things never change," Fleur said with a knowing smile. "You always preferred action to diplomacy." "You've got that right," Tonks chimed in. "You should see him in budget meetings, looks like he'd rather face another dragon." "I faced a budget meeting just fine yesterday," Harry protested. Tonks snorted. "You fell asleep with your eyes open. I had to kick you under the table 3 times. 4 times, Harry corrected. "That last one was completely unnecessary." "That's what partners are for," Tonks said, her shoulder bumping playfully against his. Fleur watched this exchange with interest. "You two work well together." 3 years as partners," Harry explained. "You learn each other's habits. Good and bad," Tonks added with a grin. They reached the evidence room, where a bored-looking security wizard checked their credentials before allowing them inside. The room was climate-controlled and heavily warded, with shelves containing tagged evidence from dozens of cases. Harry led them to a table where the artifacts from the raid were laid out, an assortment of ancient-looking objects including a dagger with runes etched on the blade, a small bronze orb covered in strange symbols, and what appeared to be a human finger bone wrapped in silver wire. Fleur approached the table with professional focus, drawing her wand and murmuring detection spells over each item. The artifacts responded differently to her magic. The orb glowed faintly, while the bone emitted a low, unsettling hum. "Fascinating," she murmured, bending close to examine the dagger. "This is Nordic, at least 9th century. See these runes? They relate to blood amplification." Harry leaned in beside her, catching a subtle scent of something floral and unfamiliar. Blood amplification. It enhances the magical properties of blood in rituals, Fleur explained. Very dark magic, prohibited for centuries. Tonks joined them on Fleur's other side. And this creepy little thing? She pointed to the bone without touching it. A focus object, Fleur said. Similar to a wand core, but designed to channel specific types of magic. This one. She frowned, casting another detection spell. This one is attuned to legilimency. It would allow the user to penetrate minds with much greater power and subtlety. Harry shivered involuntarily, memories of Voldemort's mental invasion still uncomfortably fresh years later. Together with these other artifacts, Fleur continued, they create a pattern. Volkov appears to be gathering tools that break through normal magical limitations, mental barriers, blood protections, magical bonds. He's building an arsenal, Tonks concluded grimly. Yes, but not a conventional one, Fleur said. These are not weapons of mass destruction. They are tools of precision and control. Harry ran a hand through his hair. Which might be worse? Voldemort wanted to destroy and dominate. Sounds like Volkov wants to fundamentally change how magic works. Or who controls it, Fleur added, looking up at Harry with those piercing blue eyes. Your capture today was significant, Harry. These artifacts might have told us what Volkov wants, but your prisoners might tell us how he plans to achieve it. Then we should talk to them, Harry said decisively. Especially the leader, he recognized me immediately. Seemed almost pleased to see me. That's not creepy at all, Tonks muttered. I want to observe the interrogation, Fleur requested. There may be technical details about the artifacts that only I would recognize. Harry nodded. Let's do it now while the evidence is fresh. The main suspect is in holding cell 3. The interrogation room was deliberately austere, blank walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, and 3 uncomfortable chairs. The suspect sat alone at the table, magical restraints binding his wrists. His scarred face remained impassive as Harry, Tonks, and Fleur entered. Auror Potter, the man said, his accent faintly Eastern European. I wondered when you would come. Harry sat across from him, laying a file on the table. You have me at a disadvantage. You know who I am, but I don't know you. Mikhail Baronoff, the man replied easily. Though I suspect you already knew that. Harry didn't confirm or deny, instead opening the file. You're a long way from St. Petersburg, Mr. Baronoff. Care to explain why you're smuggling dark artifacts into Britain? Baronoff's eyes flicked to Fleur and Tonks, who had positioned themselves on either side of the room. Interesting company you keep, Potter. A metamorphmagus and a half-vila. Nikolai said you surrounded yourself with power. Harry kept his expression neutral, though he noted Baronoff's casual reference to Volkov by first name. We're asking the questions here. What's Volkov planning with these artifacts? A thin smile spread across Baronoff's face. You misunderstand. Nikolai doesn't want to destroy or conquer. He wants to liberate. To return magic to its pure, unrestricted form. By collecting dark objects that amplify blood magic and mental domination. Tonks challenged from her corner. Sounds liberating. Baronoff turned to her, unperturbed. Magic is magic. Dark, light, these are artificial distinctions created by those who fear true power. His gaze shifted back to Harry. You of all people should understand, Potter. How many times were you held back by arbitrary restrictions? How many died because you weren't allowed to use every weapon at your disposal? The words hit uncomfortably close to home. Harry had often wondered, in the darkest days of the war, whether things might have ended sooner if the good side hadn't limited itself. We're not here to debate philosophy, Harry said firmly. We want names, locations, and Volkov's next target. Baronoff leaned back in his chair, the restraints clinking. I don't have that information. Nikolai compartmentalizes everything. But he did give me a message for you, specifically. Harry raised an eyebrow, waiting. He says you're wasted as an Auror. That your potential is being squandered upholding a system that fears true magical innovation. Baronoff's eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. He says when you're ready to embrace real power, he'll welcome you. Fleur made a small noise of disbelief. He thinks Harry would join him. After everything? Baronoff turned to her with that same unsettling smile. Everyone has their price, Ms. Delacour. For some, it's power. For others, it's freedom. For many, it's love. His eyes darted meaningfully between Fleur and Tonks before settling back on Harry. Nikolai understands what people truly want, beneath their pretenses. Harry stood abruptly. We're done here for now. Enjoy your accommodations in Azkaban while we round up the rest of your network. As they exited the interrogation room, Harry felt unsettled. Not by the threat, but by the feeling that Baronoff had seen something in him, some hidden doubt or desire, that Harry himself wasn't fully aware of. That was weird, Tonks said as the door sealed behind them. Was he trying to recruit you or threaten you? Both, I think, Harry replied. Volkov seems to have a fascination with magical potential. Makes sense he'd be interested in. He trailed off, uncomfortable with acknowledging his own power. In The Wizard Who Defeated Voldemort, Fleur finished for him. Her expression was thoughtful. But there was something else. The way he looked at all three of us. Yeah, that was properly creepy, Tonks agreed. Like he knew something we didn't. Harry checked his watch. It's getting late. We should compile what we know and pick this up tomorrow. The artifacts need more thorough analysis anyway. I have a secure lab at Gringotts where we can examine them properly, Fleur offered. If you can arrange to transport them there tomorrow. I'll handle the paperwork, Harry promised. They walked together to the Auror Department's main office, which was mostly deserted at this late hour. Harry gathered his things, aware of both women waiting for him. Fancy a drink? Tonks suggested suddenly. The leaky cauldron should still be open. Might help us process all this. She gestured vaguely to encompass the day's events. Harry hesitated, then nodded. After a day like today, unwinding sounded perfect. Fleur. Want to join us? Fleur seemed surprised by the invitation, then pleased. I would like that, yes. It has been a long day. 20 minutes later, they settled into a corner booth at the Leaky Cauldron. The pub was quiet on a Tuesday night, with just a few patrons scattered at distant tables. Harry returned from the bar with 3 butterbeers. To successful raids, Tonks proposed, raising her bottle. And new partnerships, Fleur added. They clinked bottles, and Harry felt a strange sense of possibility as he looked between the two witches. Tonks with her vibrant energy and Fleur with her elegant confidence, both brilliant in completely different ways. So, Tonks said after a long sip, how long are you in London, Fleur? Or do you live here now? I split my time, Fleur explained. 1 week here, 1 week in Paris. But this investigation may keep me in London longer. She looked at Harry. I heard you rebuilt Grimmauld Place after the war. Harry nodded. Took nearly a year, but it's actually livable now. Nothing like the headquarters you might remember. He's being modest, Tonks chimed in. He completely transformed it. Even got rid of that horrible portrait of Sirius's mother. How did you manage that? Fleur asked, genuinely impressed. Bill tried everything when we were there during the war. Harry grinned. Turned out the permanent sticking charm wasn't actually on the portrait, it was on the wall itself. So I removed the entire wall. Both women laughed, and the tension from the day began to dissolve. The conversation flowed easily after that, moving from work to reminiscences to their lives now. Harry learned that Fleur had an apartment in Diagon Alley for her London stays, while Tonks still lived in the quirky cottage she'd bought after her divorce. Being married to a werewolf was challenging, Tonks admitted after her second butterbeer. We both tried, but in the end, we wanted different things. Remus needed space and solitude, and she glanced briefly at Harry, then away. I needed someone more present. I understand completely, Fleur said with surprising empathy. Bill and I had similar realizations. The war brought us together, but in peacetime, we discovered we had different visions for our lives. He wanted many children immediately, a house full of noise and activity like his childhood. I wanted to establish my career first. Harry listened, fascinated by these glimpses into their lives. He'd been so focused on rebuilding the wizarding world and finding his place in it that his own personal life had taken a back seat. A few brief relationships had fizzled out, largely due to his fame and the demands of Auror training. What about you, Harry? Fleur asked, using his name without the French inflection for the first time. The papers occasionally link you with someone new, but nothing seems to last. Harry made a face. The papers exaggerate. There have been a few dates, but nothing serious. He took a swig of butterbeer. Hard to know who's interested in me versus the boy who lived. That must be difficult, Fleur said softly, her blue eyes sympathetic. I understand somewhat, being part Vila creates similar problems. Men see the beauty, the allure, not the person. At least you two have recognizable faces, Tonks joked, briefly morphing her features into an exact copy of Harry's before shifting back. I once had a bloke not realize he'd been on 3 dates with the same woman. They all laughed, but Harry found himself studying Tonks with new interest. He'd always appreciated her humor and honesty, but tonight he was noticing other things, the intelligence in her eyes, the genuine warmth of her smile. Looks like they're closing up, Harry noted as Tom the barkeeper began extinguishing lights. They'd been talking for nearly 2 hours without realizing it. Outside, the night air was cool and refreshing after the warmth of the pub. The three stood somewhat awkwardly on the cobblestones of Diagon Alley. I should head home, Tonks said, stifling a yawn. Early start tomorrow if we're going to crack this case. I'll walk you to the apparition point, Harry offered automatically. I can manage, Tonks said with a smile. Not that drunk, Potter. It's not about that, Harry replied. Just being a gentleman. Fleur's apartment is on the way, Tonks pointed out. You should escort her first. Or we could all walk together, Fleur suggested diplomatically. They set off down the nearly deserted street, the shops dark and shuttered around them. Their footsteps echoed on the cobblestones, creating a comfortable rhythm. What time should we meet tomorrow? Fleur asked. 9 at the ministry. Harry proposed. We can arrange transport for the artifacts then. They reached the elegant townhouse where Fleur's apartment was located. She paused at the steps, turning to face them. Thank you both for today, she said. It's good to work with familiar faces. We make a good team, Harry agreed, surprised to find he meant it. Despite the initial awkwardness, the three of them had fallen into an effective working relationship almost immediately. Fleur hesitated, then leaned in to kiss Harry on both cheeks in the French manner. Good night, Harry. She turned to Tonks and, after a moment's consideration, did the same. Good night, Tonks. As Fleur climbed the steps, Harry caught a glimpse of Tonks' expression, a mixture of surprise and something harder to define. They watched until Fleur disappeared inside, then continued toward the apparition point. She's different than I remember, Harry commented as they walked. More substance behind the dazzle? Tonks suggested. Harry nodded. Exactly. During the Triwizard tournament, I was too young and intimidated to see past the Vila thing. During the war, there wasn't time to really know anyone. People grow up, Tonks said simply. We all have. They reached the apparition point, a small courtyard designated for magical transportation. The night was quiet around them, just the distant sounds of London traffic beyond the magical district. Thanks for suggesting the drink, Harry said. It was good to unwind. Needed it after that interrogation, Tonks replied. She looked up at him, her natural hazel eyes reflecting the streetlights. You okay? Baronoff seemed to get under your skin with that recruitment pitch. Harry sighed, running a hand through his hair. Just brings up old questions. About power and limits and choices. For what it's worth, Tonks said, her voice unusually serious, the fact that you still question yourself is why you'd never go dark. The truly dangerous ones never doubt. Without thinking, Harry reached out and squeezed her hand. Thanks, Tonks. That helps. She squeezed back, her hand warm in his. For a moment, they stood there connected, something new and undefined humming between them. See you tomorrow, Potter, she finally said, releasing his hand with what seemed like reluctance. Try not to get ambushed before then. No promises, he replied with a smile. With a wink and a crack, Tonks disapparated, leaving Harry alone with thoughts that were suddenly a lot more complicated than they'd been that morning. The ministry was already bustling when Harry arrived the next morning. He'd slept poorly, his mind replaying moments from the previous day, the raid, Baronoff's cryptic comments, and the unexpected connections with both Tonks and Fleur. He found Tonks already at her desk, hair a professional auburn today, focused on a stack of reports. She looked up as he approached, her smile brightening. Morning, boss. Coffee's on your desk, figured you'd need it after yesterday. You're a lifesaver, Harry said gratefully, taking a long sip from the steaming mug. Any updates? Baronoff's been singing like a phoenix since dawn, Tonks reported. Nothing on Volkov directly, but he's given up 3 other smuggling operations across Europe. Teams in France and Germany are moving on them now. Good, Harry said, sitting on the edge of her desk. What about? He was interrupted by the arrival of Fleur, who swept into the Auror office with purpose. She wore the same Gringotts uniform as yesterday, but somehow made the standard issue robes look elegant. Good morning, she greeted them. I've made arrangements for the artifacts to be transferred to Gringotts. The goblins have prepared a secure examination room for us. Harry nodded, standing. I've got the transfer paperwork ready. We just need Robart's signature. The 3 of them headed to the head Auror's office, drawing curious glances from other Aurors. Harry was used to attention, he'd been getting it his whole life, but something about walking with these 2 particular witches felt different. More meaningful. Robards approved the transfer quickly, and by 10 o'clock, they were descending into the depths of Gringotts. The goblin-driven cart rattled along the tracks at breakneck speed, taking them far below the public vaults. The security division operates on level 9, Fleur explained as they plunged deeper. Completely separate from the regular bank operations. The cart finally stopped at a platform carved from solid stone. 2 goblin guards stood at attention beside a massive iron door inlaid with silver runes. Ms. Delacour, one of the goblins acknowledged with a nod that bordered on respectful. Gornick, Fleur replied with equal formality. These are Aurors Potter and Tonks. They have authorization to access the examination room. The goblin studied them critically, then pressed his palm to one of the door runes. Proceed. Director Nagrok is waiting inside. The examination room beyond was impressive, a circular chamber with walls of polished black stone. Various magical instruments lined the perimeter, some familiar from Harry's Auror training, others completely foreign. In the center stood a large table covered in protective runes, where their artifacts had already been arranged. A severe-looking goblin in elaborate robes stood examining one of the items with a jeweler's loupe. Director Nagrok, Fleur said formally. May I present Auror Potter and Auror Tonks of the British Ministry? The goblin lowered his loupe and fixed them with a penetrating stare. The artifacts you recovered are extremely disturbing, Mr. Potter. Their combined purpose suggests something far beyond ordinary dark magic. That's what we're hoping to understand, Harry replied. What exactly is Volkov planning? Nagrok gestured to the table. Ms. Delacour will assist you. She is one of our most knowledgeable experts on magical artifacts. The approval in his voice was unmistakable, high praise from a goblin. I will return for your findings later. After the director departed, Fleur moved to the table with practiced efficiency. We should examine each item individually, then test them in combination. For the next 2 hours, they worked methodically through the collection. Fleur demonstrated remarkable expertise, identifying the origin and purpose of most artifacts with precision. Harry found himself increasingly impressed by her technical knowledge and magical skill. Tonks proved equally valuable, her aura training helping identify patterns and connections between the items. These weren't collected at random, she noted, pointing to recurring symbols across several artifacts. They're designed to work together. Harry leaned over the dagger they'd found, careful not to touch it directly. This symbol here matches the one on the orb, but it's inverted. Yes. Fleur said excitedly, moving to his side. The dagger channels blood magic outward, while the orb contains and amplifies it. Together they could create a feedback loop of magical energy. That can't be good, Tonks muttered, joining them. It gets worse, Fleur continued. Add the bone focus for mental magic, and you have a system that could potentially bind multiple wizards' powers together under one controlling mind. Harry felt a chill. A magical collective controlled by one wizard. Exactly, Fleur confirmed. Nikolai Volkov is building a way to harness and control the magic of his followers, multiplying his own power exponentially. And he wants to recruit powerful wizards, Tonks added grimly. Like you, Harry. The implication hung in the air. Volkov wasn't just another dark wizard seeking destruction, he was developing something fundamentally new and terrifying. We need to inform Robards immediately, Harry decided. This goes beyond a smuggling operation. As they prepared to leave, the artifacts carefully secured, Fleur placed a hand on Harry's arm. There's something else, she said quietly. Something the goblins have been tracking that might be related. A series of break-ins at ancient magical sites across Europe, places of historical power. What kind of places? Harry asked. Stonehenge, the Oracle at Delphi, the Externstein in Germany, Fleur listed. All sites where magical ley lines converge. Tonks frowned. You think Volkov is targeting these sites? It would fit with what we've learned today, Fleur said. If he's seeking to amplify and channel magical power, these sites would be invaluable. Harry nodded thoughtfully. We should check if any similar sites in Britain have reported disturbances. I know just who to ask, Tonks said suddenly. Neville Longbottom's been working with the Department of Mysteries on magical herbology sites. If anyone knows about unusual activity at power nexuses, it would be him. Good thinking, Harry agreed. Let's head back to the ministry and bring everyone up to speed. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and research. Neville confirmed that several ancient magical sites in Britain had reported unexplained magical fluctuations over the past month. Robards ordered increased security at all known locations and called in experts from the Department of Mysteries. By evening, Harry found himself mentally exhausted but too wired to go home. The implications of what they'd discovered weighed heavily on him. You look like you need another drink, came Tonks' voice from his office doorway. She'd changed into casual clothes, jeans and a weird sister's t-shirt that reminded him she was only 7 years his senior, despite her professional demeanor during work hours. Harry smiled tiredly. That obvious? Only to someone who knows the world might be ending again, face, she replied lightly, though her eyes were serious. Fleur's still here too, finishing up some reports for Gringotts. I was thinking we could all grab dinner. Compare notes outside these walls. Harry hesitated only briefly. Sounds perfect. Let me just finish this last form. 20 minutes later, they were seated at a small wizarding restaurant in Diagon Alley. More upscale than the Leaky Cauldron, but still casual enough that they didn't look out of place in their work clothes. Fleur had joined them readily, seeming pleased at the invitation. To making progress, Harry proposed once their drinks arrived. They clinked glasses, and Harry found himself studying both women as they launched into a discussion about the day's discoveries. They were so different, Tonks animated and colorful, using her hands as she talked, Fleur precise and thoughtful, her observations carefully structured. Yet they worked together surprisingly well, each recognizing the other's strengths. "You're quiet, Harry," Fleur noted during a lull in conversation. "Are you concerned about what we found?" Harry nodded slowly. "It reminds me too much of Voldemort's early days. People dismissed him as a fringe radical until suddenly he wasn't. The difference is we're catching this early," Tonks pointed out. "And we know what we're dealing with." "Do we?" Harry questioned. Baronoff seemed to think Volkov has some grand philosophical purpose. That he's not just power-hungry but believes he's right. "Those are the most dangerous kind," Fleur said softly. "The true believers." Their food arrived, momentarily lightening the mood. They ate hungrily, the day's intensity having built up appetites none of them had noticed until now. "So what's our next move?" Tonks asked between bites. "We need to get ahead of Volkov instead of just reacting," Harry said. "If he's targeting ancient power sites, we should try to predict which one's next." Fleur nodded thoughtfully. "I can work with the Gringotts researchers to identify the most likely targets based on magical significance and accessibility. And I'll coordinate with international Auror offices," Tonks added. "If he's operating across borders, we need a unified response." Harry felt a surge of gratitude for both of them. "You know, we make a pretty good team." "We do," Fleur agreed, her blue eyes warm as she looked at him. "The best," Tonks confirmed with a grin, her knee brushing his under the table. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they finished their meal. Harry found himself relaxing for the first time that day, enjoying the easy banter between the three of them. When Fleur shared stories of the ridiculous security demands of some Gringotts clients, Tonks countered with equally absurd tales from Auror patrol duty. "At least you don't have Rita Skeeter camping outside your flat anymore," Tonks teased Harry. "Remember when she spent a week trying to prove you were secretly raising a dragon in Grimmauld Place?" Harry groaned. "Don't remind me. Hagrid sent me 3 owls asking if it was true and if he could visit the dragon." Fleur laughed, the sound musical and genuine. "She once wrote that I was using Vila magic to hypnotize the goblins into giving me access to restricted vaults." "Were you?" Tonks asked with exaggerated suspicion. "If I could hypnotize goblins, I would have them approve my expense reports faster," Fleur replied dryly. The evening stretched on pleasantly, and Harry found himself reluctant for it to end. There was something uniquely comfortable about being with these two women, no pressure to be the chosen one or the boy who lived, just Harry. As they finally left the restaurant, the spring night was mild and clear. Stars twinkled overhead, visible even through London's light pollution. "I should check on the prisoners before heading home," Harry said. "Make sure Baronoff hasn't had any convenient memory lapses overnight." "I'll come with you," Tonks offered immediately. "2 sets of ears are better than 1. Fleur nodded. "And I should return to Gringotts to secure the artifacts for the night. The goblins will be waiting." They walked together until the point where they needed to separate, Fleur toward Gringotts, Harry and Tonks toward the ministry. "I'll see you both tomorrow morning?" Fleur asked. 8 o'clock at my office, Harry confirmed. "We'll plan our next steps then." Fleur hesitated, then stepped forward to kiss Harry's cheek goodbye. The gesture was becoming familiar, yet still sent an unexpected warmth through him. She did the same to Tonks, who looked surprised but not displeased. "Good night, both of you," Fleur said with a small smile before turning toward the bank. Harry and Tonks watched her go for a moment before continuing toward the ministry. Night had fully fallen now, and the streets were relatively empty. "She's really not what I expected," Tonks commented as they walked. "I always had this image of her as this snooty princess type." "War changes people," Harry said. "Makes you see what matters." Tonks nodded, her shoulder occasionally brushing against his as they walked. "True enough. Still, it's strange working with her. She's so perfect all the time. Does she ever trip over things or spill coffee down her front? Harry chuckled. Not that I've seen. But then, you've cornered the market on endearing clumsiness. Oi! Tonks protested, elbowing him playfully. I'll have you know I've gone 3 whole days without knocking anything over. A new record, Harry teased. They bantered comfortably as they made their way to the ministry and down to the holding cells. The night guard nodded them through with minimal fuss, being Harry Potter had some advantages. Baronoff was awake despite the late hour, sitting on his cell bed with an air of calm resignation. Back so soon, Auror Potter, he greeted them. And with the metamorphmagus again. No vela tonight? Harry ignored the bait. Just checking you're being treated properly. And seeing if you've remembered anything useful about Volkov's plans. Baronoff smiled thinly. Always so concerned with proper treatment. That's what he admires about you, you know. Principles in a world that lacks them. Cut the philosophy, Tonks said sharply. We know about the ancient power sites. What's Volkov planning to do with them? A flicker of surprise crossed Baronoff's face before he controlled it. You've been busy. Good. Nikolai appreciates worthy opponents. Not opponents, Harry corrected. We're going to stop him before he goes any further down this path. Baronoff leaned forward, his eyes intense. You still don't understand. This isn't about conquest or control for its own sake. It's about freedom, magical freedom. Breaking the artificial boundaries placed on our abilities. By binding multiple wizards' powers to one controlling mind. Harry challenged. Doesn't sound like freedom to me. Again, that flash of surprise. You've analyzed the artifacts thoroughly. Impressive. What's the next target? Tonks pressed. More smuggling. Another power site. Baronoff sat back, suddenly looking tired. I don't know. As I told you, Nikolai compartmentalizes. But I will tell you this, Potter, he'll reach out to you directly, soon. He believes you of all people will understand once you hear him out. I've heard enough Dark Wizard sales pitches for one lifetime, thanks, Harry replied coolly. As they left the cells, Harry felt Tonks watching him closely. You okay? She asked once they were alone in the elevator. Fine, Harry said automatically, then sighed. Actually, no. I'm tired of being some symbol that Dark Wizards either want to destroy or recruit. Like I'm this perfect test case for their twisted philosophies. Tonks leaned against the elevator wall. You know why they fixate on you, right? Because you've always had choices and made the right ones. You're living proof that power doesn't have to corrupt. Harry looked at her, struck by the insight. In the soft light of the elevator, with her hair shifted to a gentle pink and her eyes warm with understanding, Tonks suddenly seemed different to him, not just his partner and friend, but someone who saw him with remarkable clarity. When did you get so wise? He asked softly. Tonks grinned. I've always been wise, Potter. You just never noticed because you were too busy being heroic. The elevator reached the atrium, now empty and echoing at this late hour. They walked in companionable silence toward the exit. Want to grab a nightcap at Grimmauld Place? Harry found himself asking impulsively. I've got that fire whiskey Kingsley gave me for Christmas. Tonks looked surprised, then pleased. Lead the way, boss. After today, we've earned it. 20 minutes later, they were settled in the comfortable sitting room of Grimmauld Place. The house was unrecognizable from its Order of the Phoenix days. Harry had torn out the dark paneling, replaced the creepy fixtures, and filled the space with warm colors and comfortable furniture. Now it felt like a home rather than a mausoleum. Harry poured 2 generous measures of fire whiskey and handed one to Tonks, who had kicked off her boots and curled up on one end of the sofa. To solving the case before anyone else gets hurt, she proposed. And to good partners, Harry added. They sipped in companionable silence for a moment. The fire whiskey burned pleasantly down Harry's throat, warming him from the inside. "I've been thinking," Tonks said eventually. "About Fleur, actually." Harry raised an eyebrow, curious. "What about her?" "She's different than I remembered. More real." Tonks swirled her drink thoughtfully. "And she looks at you differently now." Harry nearly choked on his fire whiskey. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on, Harry," Tonks said with a knowing smile. "Surely you've noticed. The way she finds reasons to touch your arm, how she listens when you speak." She took another sip. "Can't blame her. You've grown up nicely from that skinny 14-year-old she met at the tournament." Harry felt heat rise in his face that had nothing to do with the fire whiskey. "I hadn't noticed," he said honestly. "I've been focused on the case." "Men," Tonks said with fond exasperation. "Always the last to know." Harry studied her face, sensing there was something more she wasn't saying. "Does it bother you?" he asked carefully. "The idea that Fleur might be interested?" Tonks hesitated, her hair shifting subtly to a deeper shade of pink, something Harry knew happened when she was nervous or emotional. "Should it?" she countered, looking him directly in the eyes. The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Harry realized with sudden clarity that the strange awareness he'd been feeling toward Tonks wasn't one-sided. "Tonks," he began, not entirely sure what he was going to say. She set her glass down on the coffee table with deliberate care. "It's complicated, isn't it? We've been partners for years. Friends. And now suddenly there's this." She gestured vaguely between them. "And Fleur," Harry added, because honesty seemed important. "And Fleur," Tonks agreed with a wry smile. "Who is brilliant and gorgeous and looks at you like you hang the moon." "So do you," Harry said quietly. "Look at me like that, I mean. Sometimes. When you think I'm not paying attention." Tonks' eyes widened, then she laughed softly. "Apparently you're not as oblivious as I thought, Potter." "Just slow," Harry admitted with a smile. He set his own glass down and shifted closer to her on the sofa. "For what it's worth, I've been looking back." The air between them seemed to hum with possibility. Tonks' eyes darted to his lips, then back to his eyes. "This could complicate things," she whispered. "Things are already complicated," Harry replied, reaching out to touch her cheek gently. Tonks leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed briefly. "What about Fleur?" "I don't know," Harry admitted. "I feel something for her too. It's different, but real." Tonks opened her eyes, studying him intently. "Well," she finally said with a hint of her usual mischief, "we've always been good at figuring things out as we go." With that, she closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt both surprising and inevitable. Harry responded immediately, one hand sliding into her soft pink hair as the other pulled her closer. The kiss deepened, years of unacknowledged attraction suddenly crystallizing into this one perfect moment. Tonks made a small sound of pleasure against his mouth, her hands gripping the front of his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Harry rested his forehead against hers. "That was about bloody time," Tonks finished for him with a grin. Harry laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Definitely." Tonks shifted to curl against his side, her head resting on his shoulder. "We should probably talk about this," she said. "Us. And Fleur. And the case." "Probably," Harry agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "But maybe not tonight." "Tomorrow," Tonks murmured, clearly content to stay where she was for now. "Tomorrow," Harry echoed, holding her close as the fire crackled peacefully in the grate. Outside Grimmauld Place, unbeknownst to either of them, a figure in a dark cloak observed the building briefly before disappearing into the night. In his hand was a small bronze orb identical to the one they'd confiscated, and it was glowing with an ominous light. Chapter 2, competing hearts. Harry woke to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the distant sound of someone moving around downstairs. For a moment, he lay disoriented, memories of the previous night flooding back, the case, the drinks at Grimmauld Place, and most vividly, kissing Tonks. He sat up quickly. Tonks. She must have stayed over, probably in one of the guest rooms after they'd talked late into the night. The kiss had changed something between them, opening a door neither had acknowledged existed. Harry pulled on jeans and a t-shirt and headed downstairs, following the sounds of movement to the kitchen. There he found Tonks, her hair a sleepy tangle of turquoise, attempting to manage the ancient magical kettle he kept forgetting to replace. "Morning," he said, leaning against the doorframe. Tonks spun around, nearly dropping a mug. "Harry. Sorry if I woke you. This kettle tried to bite me, so I might have sworn a bit loudly." "It does that," Harry said, moving to take the kettle from her. "You have to stroke the handle first." "Only you would own kitchenware that needs petting," Tonks said, watching as the kettle immediately calmed under Harry's touch. A slightly awkward silence fell between them. Last night had ended with more talking than kissing, but the shift in their relationship hung in the air, demanding acknowledgement. About last night, they both started simultaneously, then laughed. "You first," Harry said, setting the kettle to boil. Tonks hopped up to sit on the counter, legs swinging slightly. "I don't regret it," she said directly. "The kiss. Just so that's clear." Relief flooded through Harry. "Me neither. Not even a little bit." "Good," Tonks nodded, her smile brightening. "But we've got a case to solve and a complicated situation with Fleur, and I don't want to mess up our partnership, so maybe we take this, whatever this is, slowly." Harry moved to stand in front of her, resting his hands lightly on her knees. "Slowly sounds smart. But I'm not interested in pretending nothing's changed." "Definitely not," Tonks agreed, reaching out to brush his perpetually messy hair from his forehead. The gesture was casual yet intimate in a way that made Harry's chest tighten pleasantly. The kettle whistled, interrupting the moment. Harry reluctantly stepped away to prepare tea for them both. "We should talk about Fleur," Tonks said after taking a sip from the mug he handed her. Harry leaned against the counter opposite her. "What about her?" "Don't play dumb, Potter," Tonks said, kicking his shin lightly. "You know exactly what. She's gorgeous, brilliant, and clearly interested in you. And based on that look on your face whenever she does her cheek-kissing thing, you're not exactly indifferent." Harry ran a hand through his hair. "It's confusing. I feel something for her, yes. But it's new and undefined. What I feel for you has been building for years, even if I didn't recognize it." "So what do we do?" Tonks asked practically. "Flip a galleon? Duel for your affections? Timeshare?" Harry choked on his tea. "Please tell me you're joking about all of those options." Tonks grinned. "Mostly. Though I do have excellent dueling skills." "I was thinking something more along the lines of honesty," Harry suggested. "With Fleur and with each other. No secrets, no games." "How very mature of you," Tonks said, but her expression was warm. "Though it might get messy." "When is my life not messy?" Harry pointed out. Tonks checked the clock on the wall and slid off the counter. "Speaking of messy, we're due at the ministry in 40 minutes, and I need to go home and change. Can't show up in yesterday's clothes or the rumor mill will explode." Harry nodded, though part of him didn't care who knew about them. "I'll see you there." Tonks stepped closer, her expression turning serious. "Just so you know, Potter, whatever happens with Fleur or this case or anything else, I'm in this. With you." The simplicity of her declaration hit Harry harder than any elaborate profession could have. He leaned down and kissed her softly, a gentle confirmation of her words. "Me too," he said when they parted. "Now go change before Robards has both our badges." With a wink and a crack, Tonks disapparated, leaving Harry alone with a half-empty mug and thoughts full of both anticipation and complication. The ministry was already bustling when Harry arrived. He headed straight for his office, nodding to colleagues along the way. His mind was still partly on Tonks and partly on how to handle seeing Fleur in less than an hour, but he forced himself to focus on the case. A memo flew onto his desk the moment he sat down. Robards wanted an update meeting at 9. Harry gathered the files and headed toward the conference room, where he found Tonks already setting up a map of magical power sites across Britain. "Morning," she said professionally, though her eyes held a warmth reserved just for him. Her hair was a work-appropriate dark purple today, pulled back in a neat ponytail. "Morning," he replied, helping her arrange the files. "Any news overnight?" "Nothing major. The teams in France and Germany raided the smuggling operations Baronoff identified. Caught a few of Volkov's people but no significant players." The door opened, and Fleur entered the room. She looked as impeccable as always in her Gringotts uniform, but there was a hint of tiredness around her eyes. "Good morning," she greeted them. "I apologize for being slightly late. The goblins called an early meeting about the artifacts." "Any new insights?" Harry asked, hyper-aware of both women in a way he hadn't been before. Fleur nodded, setting her bag down and removing several scrolls. "Yes, actually. We've identified the origin of the bone focus. It belonged to a powerful legilimens from the 14th century. The magical signature is distinctive." "That's helpful," Tonks said, moving to look at the scrolls Fleur spread across the table. "Does it tell us anything about Volkov's plans?" "Perhaps," Fleur said. This particular wizard was known for creating a mind link between his followers, allowing them to communicate instantaneously across great distances. Harry frowned. "Like Voldemort did with the Dark Mark, but more sophisticated?" "Much more," Fleur confirmed. "Not just communication but sharing of magical knowledge and even power in certain circumstances." The implications were disturbing. Before they could discuss further, Robards entered with several senior aurors and representatives from international magical cooperation. "Right, let's get started," Robards said briskly. "Potter, bring everyone up to speed." Harry outlined their findings about the artifacts and Volkov's apparent interest in ancient power sites. As he spoke, he noticed Tonks and Fleur occasionally making eye contact, assessing each other in a way that had nothing to do with the case. Based on the pattern of activity, Harry concluded, "We believe Volkov may target one of the major power nexuses in Britain next. We've identified 3 likely candidates." He pointed to locations marked on the map. Avebury Stone Circle, the Glastonbury Tor, and the Callanish Stones in Scotland, Tonks elaborated. "Each has significant magical properties and aligns with the other sites that have been compromised. We've increased security at all 3, Robards added. But we need to be proactive, not just reactive." "What's Volkov's endgame here?" "Based on the artifacts," Fleur said, "he appears to be developing a method to channel and amplify magical power across multiple wizards, creating a network with himself at the center." "Like a magical hive mind?" one of the international representatives asked, looking disturbed. "Not exactly," Fleur clarified. "More like a conductor leading an orchestra. Each wizard would maintain their individual abilities but could be directed by the central controlling force. And potentially have their power siphoned," Harry added grimly. The meeting continued for another hour, with assignments distributed and contingency plans established. When it finally broke up, Harry, Tonks, and Fleur remained behind to coordinate their specific roles. "I'll liaise with the European Aura offices," Tonks offered. "See if they've picked up any chatter about Volkov's next move." "I should return to Gringotts," Fleur said. "The goblins have granted me access to their historical archives. There may be precedents for this type of magic that could help us understand what we're facing." Harry nodded. "I'll coordinate security for the power sites and check in with our informants in Eastern Europe." They worked steadily through the morning, occasionally crossing paths as they followed their respective leads. Around noon, Harry found himself alone with Fleur in the evidence room, reviewing the artifacts once more. "Have you eaten, Harry?" Fleur asked, setting down the notes she'd been examining. Harry realized he'd completely forgotten about lunch. "No, actually. Lost track of time." "Perhaps we could get something from the Ministry Café," she suggested. "I have some theories I'd like to discuss away from all." She gestured at the magical instruments surrounding them. They found a quiet corner in the café, away from curious onlookers. Despite the professional nature of their meeting, Harry couldn't help noticing how the light caught in Fleur's silvery hair, or the graceful way she moved. "You seem distracted," Fleur observed after they'd ordered sandwiches. Harry hesitated, then opted for honesty. "It's been an intense few days. The case, working with you again, everything with Baronoff's interrogation." Fleur studied him thoughtfully. "There is something different about you, Harry. Not just from when we first met, that's to be expected after so many years, but even from when I saw you at Bill and I's wedding." "The war changed everyone," Harry said, a response he often used to deflect deeper conversation. "Yes, but this is something else." Fleur leaned forward slightly. "You seem more present. More comfortable with yourself and your power." Her perception unsettled him. "I've had time to figure some things out," he admitted. "Being an aura helps, using magic to protect rather than just to fight." "It suits you," she said simply. "This purpose." Their food arrived, providing a momentary distraction. As they ate, the conversation shifted to Fleur's work with Gringotts and her life split between London and Paris. Harry found himself genuinely interested in her experiences, the challenges she'd faced being part Vila in the rigid goblin hierarchy. "They tested me constantly at first," she explained. "Assigned me impossible tasks, gave me contradictory instructions. I think they expected me to use my Vila allure to manipulate my way through." "But you didn't," Harry guessed. "No. I completed each task through skill alone." Pride flickered in her eyes. "After 6 months, the head goblin called me to his office. I expected to be fired. Instead, he assigned me to the security division, the first human to hold such a position." "That's impressive," Harry said sincerely. Fleur shrugged elegantly. "I wanted to be valued for my abilities, not my appearance or heritage." She looked directly at him. "You understand this, I think." Harry nodded slowly. "Being seen for who you are, not what people expect you to be." "Exactly." Fleur's smile was warm. "It's why I've always appreciated how you treat me, Harry. Even when you were a boy, you saw past the Vila allure." "To be fair, I was terrified of you during the tournament," Harry admitted with a laugh. "Too scared to be affected." "And now?" Fleur asked softly. The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Harry met her gaze, aware they were no longer talking about her Vila heritage. "Now I see you," he said simply. "The real you." Fleur's eyes softened. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his, a gesture both innocent and intimate. "I see you too, Harry," she replied. "I always have." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Harry was acutely aware of her touch, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way her blue eyes held his without wavering. A paper airplane memo swooped down between them, breaking the spell. Harry unfolded it quickly, his expression changing as he read. "What is it?" Fleur asked, instantly alert. "Tonks," Harry said, already standing. "She's found something. We need to go." They found Tonks in the Aura communication room, surrounded by magical maps and monitoring devices. Her hair had shifted to a focused deep blue as she coordinated with magical law enforcement across Europe. "There you are," she said, looking up as they entered. Her eyes flickered briefly between Harry and Fleur before returning to the maps. "We've got movement at 2 locations simultaneously, magical energy spikes at Avebury and what looks like a break-in attempt at the Department of Mysteries. 2 targets at once." Harry frowned. That's bold, even for Volkov. Or a diversion, Fleur suggested. One real target, one distraction. Tonks nodded. That's my thinking. The question is, which is which? Harry studied the magical signatures pulsing on the maps. Avebury's the pattern match with the other power sites. That's likely the primary target. But the Department of Mysteries contains powerful artifacts and research, Fleur pointed out. If Volkov is building a magical network, either location could provide what he needs. Harry made a quick decision. We split up. Tonks and I will take Avebury with a team. Fleur, can you coordinate with Department of Mysteries security? Yes, Fleur agreed immediately. The goblins have protocols with them for exactly this scenario. Good. We meet back here regardless of what we find. Harry turned to Tonks. Grab Johnston and Westley. I'll alert Robards and get us emergency port keys. The next 15 minutes were a blur of preparation. Harry found himself falling into the familiar rhythm of pre-mission readiness, checking equipment, reviewing tactical approaches, briefing the team. Throughout it all, he was aware of both Tonks and Fleur moving with similar efficiency, each preparing for their respective assignments. Just before they separated, Fleur caught Harry's arm. Be careful, she said, her eyes serious. Volkov wants something from you specifically. This could be a trap. I'm always careful, Harry replied with a half-smile. Liar, Fleur said, but her expression was fond. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, her lips lingering a fraction longer than strictly necessary. Come back safely. From across the room, Harry caught Tonks watching the exchange, her expression unreadable. When their eyes met, she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement before returning to her preparations. Minutes later, Harry and Tonks stood with their team at the Ministry's designated departure point, port keys in hand. Ready? Harry asked, meeting Tonks' eyes. Born ready, she replied with her characteristic grin, though there was something more serious beneath it. Let's go catch some dark wizards. The port keys activated with a familiar tug behind the navel, and the world dissolved into swirling color. They landed just outside the massive stone circle of Avebury. Even from a distance, Harry could feel something was wrong. The air hummed with magical energy that made the hair on his arms stand up. Spread out, approach from multiple angles, he instructed the team. Disillusionment charms active. No one engages without my signal. Tonks fell into step beside him as they moved toward the ancient site. Something's off, she murmured. Feel it? Harry nodded grimly. The magic's wrong somehow. Discordant. They crept closer, keeping to the shadows of the massive standing stones. What they saw in the center of the circle made them both stop short. A group of robed figures stood in a precise formation, wands raised toward a central point where a familiar bronze orb, identical to the one they'd confiscated, floated in midair. The orb pulsed with an eerie light that seemed to flow from the stones themselves, channeling through the wizards in a visible current. 7 wizards, Tonks whispered. And that's not Volkov in the center. Harry squinted, recognizing the tall figure directing the ritual. That's Ivanovich, Volkov's second-in-command according to the intelligence reports. So where's the big bad himself? Tonks wondered. The question was answered by a crackle from their communication badges. Potter, Tonks, came Robard's urgent voice. Department of Mysteries is the real target. Volkov himself confirmed on site. Fleur Delacour engaged him directly but is cut off. We need backup now. Harry's blood ran cold. Fleur facing Volkov alone. Go, Tonks said immediately, reading his expression. I've got this. Take Johnston with you. Tonks, we don't have time to argue, she said firmly. I can handle these lackeys. Fleur needs you more right now. Harry knew she was right, but leaving her felt wrong. Be careful, he said, gripping her arm briefly. You too, she replied, her eyes conveying everything words couldn't. Now go save our French friend. Harry signaled to Johnston and activated their emergency return port keys. The last thing he saw was Tonks, hair shifting to battle-ready red, moving with deadly purpose toward the unsuspecting dark wizards. The Department of Mysteries was in chaos when Harry arrived. Alarms blared, magical containment barriers flickered ominously, and the air tasted of burnt ozone. 2 security wizards lay unconscious near the entrance, though a quick check confirmed they were still alive. "This way," Johnston said, pointing to a trail of magical residue visible only to trained aurors. Heavy spell damage. They followed the trail deeper into the department, past rooms Harry remembered all too vividly from his 5th year. The trail led to a section he didn't recognize, a circular chamber filled with floating orbs of various sizes, each containing what appeared to be swirling galaxies. In the center of the room stood Nikolai Volkov. He was nothing like Harry had imagined. Rather than the imposing, Voldemort-like figure he'd expected, Volkov was a trim, distinguished man who might have been 50 or 80, it was impossible to tell. His salt and pepper hair was neatly styled, and he wore elegant robes that seemed more appropriate for a ministry function than a heist. Only his eyes betrayed his nature, cold, calculating, and utterly remorseless. And at one point before him, partially shielded by a shimmering magical barrier of her own creation, was Fleur. Her Gringotts uniform was torn at the shoulder, and a trickle of blood ran from her temple, but her wand remained steady, and her expression showed no fear, only fierce concentration. "How fascinating," Volkov was saying in lightly accented English. "A shield variation I haven't encountered before. Goblin magic integrated with wizarding technique?" "Something like that," Fleur replied tensely, maintaining the shield even as it visibly strained against Volkov's pressure. "Inventive," Volkov acknowledged. "But ultimately futile." Harry didn't hesitate. He fired a powerful stunning spell directly at Volkov's back while simultaneously signaling Johnston to circle left. Volkov spun with inhuman speed, deflecting Harry's spell with a casual flick of his wand. "Ah, Mr. Potter," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I was hoping you might join us. Now we can dispense with these preliminaries." "Step away from her," Harry demanded, wand trained on Volkov's heart. "It's over." Volkov smiled slightly. "Over? My dear boy, we've barely begun." With a swift, elegant movement, he cast a spell Harry had never seen before, a twisting ribbon of silvery magic that expanded outward in all directions. Harry threw up a shield, but the spell wasn't aimed at him. Instead, it wrapped around the room itself, sealing the exits and encasing the floating orbs in a protective bubble. "Much better," Volkov said. "Now we can speak privately." Fleur used the momentary distraction to move to Harry's side, her own wand still raised. Johnston attempted to break through the magical barrier at the door but was thrown backward by a pulse of energy. "I've waited a long time to meet you, Harry Potter," Volkov continued conversationally. "The wizard who defeated the Dark Lord twice. The Master of Death, if certain legends are to be believed. What do you want?" Harry demanded, keeping his wand steady. "Currently, these." Volkov gestured to the floating orbs. "The department calls them nexus points, captured intersections of magical ley lines. Quite useful for my work. Your work creating a magical network that lets you control other wizards?" Harry challenged. Volkov's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've been thorough in your investigation. I'm impressed." He took a step forward. "But you misunderstand. Control is crude. Inefficient. What I'm creating is harmony. Synthesis." "By force," Fleur said sharply. "By necessity," Volkov corrected. "Our world has fragmented magic, divided it into arbitrary categories of acceptable and forbidden. We've forgotten that magic itself is neither good nor evil, it simply is. Power in its purest form." Despite himself, Harry felt a twinge of curiosity. Volkov's words echoed questions he'd had himself over the years about the sometimes arbitrary-seeming divisions in magical practice. "If you believe that," Harry said, "then why the secretive operation? The smuggling? The attacks?" "Because those in power fear change," Volkov replied simply. "They would rather maintain their comfortable illusions than face a new magical paradigm." His gaze intensified. "But you, Harry Potter, you have never been afraid to question authority when necessary. To break rules that needed breaking." Harry felt Fleur tense beside him, sensing the danger in Volkov's words. "Whatever you're offering," Harry said firmly, "I'm not interested." "Are you certain?" Volkov asked, taking another step forward. "I'm offering freedom, Harry. Freedom from the constraints that have bound magic for centuries. The ability to explore every aspect of your considerable power without arbitrary limitations." "The limitations exist for a reason," Harry countered. "Do they?" Volkov smiled. "Or do they exist because those who established them feared what wizards like you might become if unfettered?" Before Harry could respond, a loud crack echoed through the chamber as Johnston attempted a powerful blasting curse against the barrier. The spell rebounded, sending him flying across the room where he crumpled against the wall, unconscious. Volkov didn't even glance in that direction. "Your colleague will live, though he'll have quite the headache when he wakes." Now, where were we? Ah yes, discussing potential. With alarming speed, Volkov flicked his wand, not at Harry or Fleur, but at one of the floating orbs. It detached from its position and drifted toward him, galaxies swirling more rapidly within. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. "A captured magical nexus," Fleur answered, her wand tracking the orb's movement. "A convergence point of natural magical energy." "Precisely," Volkov said approvingly. "And when properly channeled." He touched his wand to the orb, and suddenly the swirling energy within connected to him, flowing up his arm in visible currents. His eyes glowed briefly with the same energy. Harry felt the magical pressure in the room increase dramatically, making it hard to breathe. Beside him, Fleur whispered something in French that sounded like a protection charm. "This is but a fraction of what's possible," Volkov said, his voice resonating with new power. "Imagine dozens of these nexus points connected, channeled through willing participants who share in the amplification. That kind of power would destroy most wizards," Fleur said. "Ordinary wizards, perhaps," Volkov conceded. "But not all are ordinary, are they?" His gaze fixed on Harry. "Some have an innate capacity far beyond the norm. Some, like you, have survived magical events that should have been impossible." Harry realized with growing unease what Volkov was suggesting. "You want me as part of your network? As some kind of magical conduit?" "As a partner," Volkov corrected. "An equal in reshaping magical understanding. Your unique experiences make you ideally suited to channel Nexus energy without harm." "And if I refuse?" Harry asked, though he already knew the answer. Volkov's expression hardened slightly. "Then I'll be forced to continue with less ideal candidates. The process is less stable without someone of your capacity. There would be losses." The threat was clear. People would die if Volkov continued his experiments without someone powerful enough to stabilize the process. "You have until the next convergence to consider my offer," Volkov continued. 3 days from now, at the full moon." "You won't get away with this," Harry said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. Volkov smiled again, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. "I already have." He raised his wand in a swift motion, and the orb pulsed with blinding light. Harry instinctively grabbed Fleur, pulling her against him and casting the strongest shield charm he knew. The room exploded with magical energy, and for a moment, all Harry could see was white light and all he could feel was Fleur's body pressed against his. When the light faded, Volkov was gone, and with him, 3 of the Nexus orbs. The magical barrier sealing the room dissolved, allowing reinforcements to finally break through. Orders poured in, securing the scene and checking on Johnston. Harry slowly lowered his shield, still holding Fleur close. "Are you hurt?" he asked, gently examining the cut on her temple. "I'm fine," she assured him, though she made no move to pull away from his protective embrace. "Thanks to you." Reality crashed back as Harry remembered. Tonks. She's still at Avebury. As if summoned by his concern, his communication badge crackled to life. "Harry? You there?" Tonks' voice came through, sounding breathless but unharmed. "We got them, all 7 in custody. The orb thing deactivated when you must have interrupted whatever Volkov was doing on your end." Relief flooded through him. "We're okay too. Volkov got away with some artifacts, but we're both in one piece." "Both?" Tonks asked, and Harry could hear the question beneath the question. "Fleur and me," he clarified. "Johnston's down but stable." "Good," Tonks said after a brief pause. "We'll wrap up here and meet you back at the ministry." As the communication ended, Harry became aware he was still holding Fleur close. She looked up at him, her blue eyes intense. "He wants you specifically," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "This isn't just about magical theory or power. He has some purpose for you particularly." "I know," Harry replied grimly. "And he's willing to hurt a lot of people to get what he wants." "We won't let that happen," Fleur said with fierce certainty, her hand gripping his arm. The "we" wasn't lost on Harry. Whatever was developing between them, she was firmly in his corner. The aftermath kept them separated for hours. Harry was debriefed extensively by Robards and representatives from the Department of Mysteries. Fleur was whisked away by Goblin security officers who'd arrived the moment the alarm was raised. Tonks and her team returned with their prisoners, launching a flurry of interrogations and evidence processing. It was nearly midnight when Harry finally made it back to his office, exhausted and frustrated. Volkov had escaped with powerful magical artifacts, made a direct recruitment pitch, and issued what amounted to an ultimatum, all while demonstrating magical abilities far beyond what they'd anticipated. A soft knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. Tonks stood in the doorway, looking as tired as he felt. She'd changed into fresh robes, but her hair had faded to a muted purple that Harry recognized as her exhaustion state. "Hey," she said simply. "Hey yourself," he replied, gesturing for her to come in. "Good work at Avebury." "Thanks." She perched on the edge of his desk rather than taking a chair. "You okay?" Heard Volkov made quite the impression. Harry sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He's nothing like Voldemort, which somehow makes him more dangerous. He's rational, controlled, believes completely in what he's doing." "And what he's doing is trying to recruit you," Tonks said, watching him carefully. "Apparently," Harry confirmed. "He thinks I'm specially suited for his magical network because of, well, everything that's happened to me, I guess." Tonks nodded slowly. "And Fleur?" "I heard she faced him directly." "She was amazing," Harry said honestly. "Held her own against him until I arrived. Used some combination of goblin and wizard magic I've never seen before." A complex emotion flashed across Tonks' face, pride and something like resignation. "She's full of surprises." Harry studied her for a moment, then stood and moved to close the office door. With a wave of his wand, he cast privacy charms around the room. "We need to talk," he said, turning back to Tonks. "About today, about Fleur, about everything." "Do we?" Tonks asked, but there was no edge to her question, just genuine uncertainty. Harry leaned against the door, maintaining some distance between them. "When I heard Fleur was facing Volkov alone, I was terrified for her. But leaving you at Avebury felt just as wrong." "I handled it fine," Tonks pointed out. "That's not the point," Harry said. "The point is I care about you both. And after today, it's clear this situation with Volkov is escalating quickly. We can't afford to be distracted by whatever's happening between the three of us." Tonks was quiet for a moment, then slid off the desk and approached him. "And what exactly is happening between the three of us, Harry?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "I'm attracted to you both," he admitted finally. "In different ways, but equally real." "And have you told Fleur about us?" "About last night?" Tonks asked, stopping just in front of him. "No," Harry said. "There hasn't been time." Tonks nodded, as if his answer confirmed something she'd already suspected. "So here we are. You're developing feelings for two women simultaneously, one of whom you've already kissed, while a dangerous dark wizard has placed a target on your back." When she put it like that, the situation sounded ridiculous. A laugh bubbled up unexpectedly, and Harry couldn't suppress it. Tonks stared at him for a second, then her mouth twitched, and suddenly they were both laughing, the slightly hysterical laughter of people under immense stress finding momentary release. "Merlin," Harry gasped when he could speak again. "My life is absurd." "Always has been," Tonks agreed, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Why stop now?" The shared moment lightened something between them. Tonks stepped closer, resting her hands lightly on his chest. "Here's what I think," she said, her expression turning more serious. "I think we focus on stopping Volkov. That's the priority. As for the rest..." She hesitated. "I meant what I said this morning. I'm in this, with you. But I won't ask you to choose between us right now." Harry placed his hands over hers. "That's more understanding than I deserve." "Probably," Tonks agreed with a small smile. "But I'm not exactly known for doing things the conventional way." "True enough," Harry said, returning her smile. Tonks leaned up and kissed him softly, a brief but tender connection. "Get some rest, Potter. Tomorrow's going to be another long day." As she turned to leave, Harry caught her arm gently. "Stay with me tonight?" he asked quietly. "Just asleep," he clarified quickly. "I don't want to be alone with Volkov's words rattling around in my head." Tonks studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." They apparat to Grimmauld Place together, the house dark and quiet as they entered. Without discussion, they moved through the familiar routine of securing the wards and checking the rooms, habits ingrained from years as horrors and the lingering effects of war. In Harry's bedroom, Tonks borrowed a t-shirt and disappeared into the bathroom to change. Harry sat on the edge of his bed, suddenly uncertain about the wisdom of his invitation. Not because he didn't want her there, but because it felt like a step they couldn't easily walk back from. When Tonks emerged, her hair had shifted to its natural mousy brown, a sight few people ever saw. She looked younger somehow, more vulnerable without her usual colorful disguise. "You never wear your natural hair," Harry observed softly. Tonks shrugged, looking slightly self-conscious. "Force of habit, I guess. Being a metamorph means never having to accept what you were born with." "I like it," Harry said honestly. "It's beautiful because it's really you." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Smooth talker," she accused, but her smile was pleased. They slipped into bed, finding a comfortable position with her back against his chest, his arm draped over her waist. The simple intimacy of it, her warmth, the scent of her hair, the quiet sound of her breathing, settled something restless in Harry's mind. What was he like? Tonks asked softly into the darkness. Volkov. Harry considered the question. Charismatic. Intelligent. Utterly convinced he's right. The worst kind of enemy, Tonks murmured. He said something that bothered me, Harry admitted. About magical limitations being arbitrary. About power being neither good nor evil. Tonks shifted to face him, her expression visible in the faint moonlight from the window. And that resonated with you? Parts of it, Harry confessed. I've always questioned some of the divisions in magic. Dark versus light. Forbidden versus permitted. Sometimes the lines seem artificial. Rather than looking concerned, Tonks nodded thoughtfully. They can be. But the intent matters, Harry. What you do with power matters. I know, he said. And that's where Volkov and I differ completely. He wants power for its own sake. I just want people to be safe. That's why he won't win, Tonks said simply, resting her hand against his cheek. And it's one of the reasons I'm falling for you. The quiet admission hung between them in the darkness. Harry pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. We should sleep, he murmured. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to stop him. Tonks agreed, already sounding drowsy. Good night, Harry. Good night, Tonks. As sleep claimed him, Harry's last thought was of Fleur, wondering if she too lay awake somewhere, processing the day's events and the growing connection between them. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through windows Harry had forgotten to close. He woke to find the bed empty beside him, but the smell of coffee drifted up from downstairs. Following the aroma, he found Tonks in the kitchen, fully dressed in fresh clothes she must have summoned from her own home. Morning, sleepyhead, she greeted him, pushing a mug of coffee his way. I let you sleep in a bit. Robards pushed the meeting to 10. Thanks, Harry said gratefully, accepting the coffee. You didn't have to cook though. Bold of you to assume I can cook, Tonks replied with a grin, gesturing to the very simple toast and eggs she'd managed. This is the extent of my culinary abilities. They ate quickly, falling into easy conversation about the case. It felt surprisingly normal, as if having breakfast together was something they'd done for years rather than just twice. I've been thinking, Tonks said as they cleared the dishes. Volkov said the next convergence is at the full moon, 3 days from now. Yeah, Harry confirmed. Probably when he plans to use those Nexus orbs he stole. So we have 3 days to figure out where he'll be and how to stop him, Tonks concluded. We should bring in Bill Weasley. Harry looked surprised. Bill? Why? He's the best cursebreaker in Britain, and he has experience with magical artifacts and ley lines from his work in Egypt, Tonks explained. Plus, he and Fleur parted on good terms. No awkwardness there. Harry nodded slowly. Good thinking. Can you contact him? Already sent an owl, Tonks admitted. He's meeting us at the ministry. Harry smiled. Efficient. I try, she replied with a wink. They finished getting ready en apparat to the ministry together, arriving to find it bustling with activity. The previous day's incidents had elevated the threat level, and additional security wizards patrolled the corridors. Fleur was waiting for them outside the conference room, engaged in conversation with Bill Weasley. The tall, scarred redhead spotted them first, raising a hand in greeting. Harry. Tonks. Bill called. Heard you two have been having all the fun without me. If by fun you mean getting attacked by power-hungry dark wizards, then yes, loads of fun, Tonks replied dryly, accepting Bill's brief hug. Harry shook Bill's hand, then turned to Fleur. She looked tired but composed, the cut on her temple now healed to a faint mark. How are you feeling? He asked quietly. Better, she replied with a small smile. The goblins were most insistent on proper healing protocols. I bet, Harry said, remembering the goblins' thorough approach to everything. Fleur's eyes flickered briefly to Tonks, then back to Harry. Something in her expression suggested she sensed the shift between them, though she said nothing about it. Shall we? She gestured to the conference room. Inside, they found Robards and several Department of Mysteries representatives already seated. Maps, reports, and magical instruments covered the large table. Now that we're all here, Robards began once they were settled, let's get down to business. Volkov has 3 Nexus orbs and, according to Potter's report, plans to activate them at the full moon 3 days from now. Our priority is determining where and stopping him before he can complete whatever ritual he's planning. Bill leaned forward, examining one of the magical instruments on the table. These orbs, they're contained intersections of ley lines, correct? One of the department representatives nodded. Precisely. Places where natural magical energy converges and can be harvested, in a sense. Then he'll need a location with similar properties to activate them properly, Bill reasoned. Somewhere the ambient magic will enhance rather than destabilize the orbs. Like the sites he's been targeting, Harry added. Avebury, Glastonbury Tor, and so on. But which one? Tonks asked the crucial question. Fleur spread out a map of magical Britain. If we overlay the known ley lines with the lunar influence at full moon. She began tracing patterns with her wand, creating glowing lines that intersected across the parchment. Bill joined her, adding his own expertise to the magical mapping. The moon will be directly overhead these 3 locations at peak power, he noted, circling 3 points where multiple lines converged. Glastonbury Tor, the Callanish stones, and... He frowned. This can't be right. What is it? Harry asked, leaning closer. The 3rd convergence point is Hogwarts, Bill said grimly. Specifically, the astronomy tower. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Hogwarts was currently occupied, even during summer break, staff preparing for the coming year, researchers using the library, and a summer program for young Muggle-born students to acclimate to the magical world. He wouldn't, Tonks said, though she sounded uncertain. It's too heavily protected. The protections were rebuilt after the war, Harry pointed out. They're strong but not impenetrable. And if Volkov has been studying ley lines and magical nexuses, he may know weaknesses we don't. We need to warn the headmistress immediately, Robards decided. And set up security at all 3 locations. If Volkov appears at any of them, we need to be ready. I want to go to Hogwarts personally, Harry said firmly. If that's where he's heading, I should be there. Robards studied him, then nodded. Take Tonks with you. Weasley, can you handle Glastonbury? Absolutely, Bill agreed. I will coordinate the team at Callanish, Fleur offered. The goblins have granted me leave to assist fully with this operation. Good, Robards said. You all leave immediately. Stay in constant communication. If anyone spots Volkov or his people, do not engage alone, call for backup. As the meeting broke up and people scattered to prepare, Harry found himself momentarily alone with both Tonks and Fleur. Be careful at Callanish, he told Fleur. Volkov's seen what you can do now. He'll be prepared if he goes there. I will be, she promised. Then, with a glance at Tonks, she added, both of you take care at Hogwarts. It would be like him to target a place that has personal significance for you, Harry. Tonks nodded in agreement. We'll watch each other's backs. An unspoken current ran between the 3 of them, awareness, concern, and something deeper that none of them were ready to name. When this is over, Harry said quietly, we should talk. All of us. Both women looked surprised, then understanding dawned in their eyes. Yes, Fleur agreed softly. We should. Definitely, Tonks added, her expression unreadable. With that implicit promise hanging between them, they separated to their assignments, each carrying their own thoughts about what such a conversation might entail. Hogwarts stood as magnificent as ever against the summer sky when Harry and Tonks apparat to Hogsmeade that afternoon. The castle had been fully restored after the Battle of Hogwarts, though subtle changes in the stonework marked where the most severe damage had occurred. Strange being back, Tonks commented as they walked the familiar path from the village to the school gates. Always is, Harry agreed, memories washing over him with each step, some joyful, others painful. Headmistress McGonagall met them at the entrance, her expression severe but welcoming. Potter, Tonks. I wish your visit came under better circumstances. So do we, Professor, Harry replied, the formal address slipping out automatically despite the years since he'd been her student. I've implemented the security measures you requested, McGonagall informed them as she led them inside. The summer students have been relocated to the lower levels, staff have been briefed, and the astronomy tower has been sealed except for your access. Thank you, Harry said. I hope we're wrong about this, but... Better to be prepared, McGonagall finished for him. I quite agree. They spent the afternoon setting up additional protective enchantments and positioning Auror strategically throughout the castle. Harry insisted on checking every approach to the astronomy tower personally, remembering all too well how Malfoy had smuggled Death Eaters into the school during his 6th year. By evening, they had transformed the tower into a carefully monitored trap. If Volkov appeared, they would be ready. Now we wait, Tonks said as they settled into a concealed position with a clear view of the tower's entrance. Waiting proved to be the hardest part. Hours stretched into a full day, then 2, with no sign of Volkov or his followers at any of the 3 locations. Regular check-ins with Bill and Fleur revealed equally quiet situations at their posts. By the afternoon of the 3rd day, the day of the full moon, tension had reached a breaking point. Harry paced the corridor near their lookout position, frustration evident in every step. He knows we're waiting, he said to Tonks, who was monitoring the magical detection instruments they'd set up. He's toying with us. Or we're wrong about the locations, Tonks suggested. Maybe there's a 4th site we haven't identified. Harry ran a hand through his hair. No, the magical calculations were clear. It has to be one of these 3. Their communication badges activated with Fleur's voice. Any activity at Hogwarts? Callanish remains quiet. Nothing here either, Harry replied. Bill reported the same at Glastonbury 10 minutes ago. Something is wrong, Fleur said, concern evident in her voice. The convergence begins at moonrise, less than 4 hours from now. Harry was about to respond when a sudden realization hit him. Fleur, are the Nexus orbs themselves linked to specific locations? There was a pause. Yes, each is tied to the site from which it was harvested. Why? Because we've been thinking about this backward, Harry said, the pieces falling into place. Volkov doesn't need to go to a power site, he's stolen the power already in those orbs. He needs a place where he can use them without interference. A place already connected to you, Tonks added, catching on. Somewhere with personal significance but not obvious enough to be heavily guarded. Harry felt a chill. Grimmauld Place. My home. That's it, Tonks agreed urgently. It's on a minor ley line, I remember Bill mentioning it when the Order first used it as headquarters. Not powerful enough to register on standard magical maps, but enough to activate the orbs. And it's connected to me through Sirius, Harry added. Blood magic through inheritance. We need to go now, Tonks said, already gathering their equipment. Harry activated his badge. Fleur, Bill, Volkov's target is Grimmauld Place. Meet us there immediately. They rushed to the edge of Hogwarts grounds where they could apparate, notifying McGonagall and Robards on the way. Within minutes, they appeared on the quiet London street where Grimmauld Place stood hidden from Muggle eyes. At first glance, everything seemed normal, the house invisible to passers-by, the street quiet in the early evening. But Harry felt it immediately, a subtle wrongness in the magical signature of the wards. Someone's been here, he murmured to Tonks. The protections have been tampered with. Before they could approach, Bill operated beside them with a soft crack, wand already drawn. What's the situation? Wards compromised, Tonks reported tersely. No visible activity yet. Fleur should be here any moment, Bill said. She was coordinating with the team at Callanish before heading over. As if summoned by his words, Fleur appeared with a soft pop, looking alert and focused. The moon rises in 3 hours and 22 minutes, she said without preamble. If Volkov is planning to use the convergence, he'll need time to prepare. Harry nodded, decision made. We go in now. Standard breach formation. Tonks and I will take point, Bill and Fleur cover our flanks. Disillusionment charms active until we have visual confirmation. They cast the charms, their bodies fading to near invisibility, and moved toward the house. Harry felt the familiar sensation of the wards recognizing him as owner, but there was a new resistance, like pushing through thick syrup rather than the usual welcoming embrace. The front door opened silently to his touch. Inside, the house was dark and eerily quiet. They moved through the entrance hall with practiced stealth, communicating with hand signals visible only to those wearing Aura-issue enchanted contact lenses. A faint glow emanated from beneath the closed door of the drawing room on the first floor. Harry signaled a pause, casting detection charms to check for traps or additional presences. The spells revealed 3 magical signatures inside the room, 2 unknown, plus 1 that matched samples taken from the Department of Mysteries incident. Volkov. Harry held up 3 fingers, then pointed to the door. The others nodded, positioning themselves optimally for entry. With a silent count of 3, Harry blasted the door open, and they surged inside, dropping their disillusionment charms. The scene that greeted them was precisely what they'd feared. Volkov stood in the center of the room, which had been cleared of furniture. Around him, the 3 stolen Nexus orbs floated in a triangular formation, already beginning to pulse with an unearthly light. 2 robed assistants worked at what appeared to be an altar of sorts, arranged with various magical instruments and a large scroll covered in runic writings. "Ah, Mr. Potter," Volkov said without looking up from his work. "Right on schedule." "Step away from the orbs," Harry commanded, his wand trained on Volkov's chest. Volkov smiled slightly. "I'm afraid I can't do that. We've reached a critical stage in the alignment." He finally looked up, his cold eyes sweeping over the 4 intruders. "Though I must commend you on determining my location. Most impressive." "It's over, Volkov," Tonks stated firmly. "The house is surrounded by Aurors. You've got nowhere to go." This was a bluff. Reinforcements were on the way but hadn't arrived yet, but Volkov merely looked amused. "I have no intention of going anywhere, Auror Tonks. In fact, you've saved me the trouble of bringing Harry here myself." Harry tensed, sensing danger in Volkov's casual confidence. "Whatever you're planning won't work." "Oh, but it already is working," Volkov replied, gesturing to the orbs, which were spinning faster now, their light intensifying. "The preliminary alignment is complete. The orbs recognize this location as magically significant to you. Your presence only strengthens the connection." One of the robed assistants moved suddenly, flinging a curse toward Bill. Fleur deflected it with remarkable speed, returning fire with a goblin shielding spell that slammed the assistant against the wall. The second assistant engaged Tonks, who ducked and rolled with metamorph-enhanced agility, firing stunning spells as she moved. Harry focused on Volkov, who had raised his wand in a complex pattern. The orbs responded to his movement, their light connecting in triangular beams that began to rotate around the room. "You still don't understand what I'm offering, Harry," Volkov said as they circled each other. "This network will revolutionize magic itself. No more arbitrary divisions, no more wasted potential." "At what cost?" Harry demanded, deflecting a subtle curse Volkov sent his way. "How many lives will your revolution destroy?" "Change always has a cost," Volkov admitted. "But the benefits will far outweigh it. Imagine healing magic 10 times more effective. Protection charms that never fail. Knowledge shared instantaneously across continents." Around them, the battle continued. Bill had joined Fleur against the first assistant, their curse-breaking expertise combining effectively. Tonks had subdued the second assistant and moved to help Harry, approaching Volkov from behind. "And who controls this network?" Harry challenged, keeping Volkov's attention. "Who decides how this power is used?" "Initially, I will guide it," Volkov acknowledged. "But eventually, it will become self-sustaining, a true magical collective where strength is shared equally." "I don't believe you," Harry said flatly. Volkov sighed, looking genuinely disappointed. "I had hoped you of all people would see the potential here." "Very well." With blinding speed, Volkov cast a spell not at Harry, but at the orbs themselves. They flared with intense light, and suddenly beams shot out in multiple directions, one connecting to Volkov, one to Harry, and others reaching for Bill, Fleur, and Tonks. Harry felt the magic hit him like a physical blow, cold and invasive. It probed at his magical core, seeking connection. With all his strength, he pushed back against it, raising shields he'd developed during acclimacy training. "Resist it," he shouted to the others, seeing them similarly affected. Tonks morphed rapidly, her body shifting between forms as she fought the magical intrusion. Bill had dropped to one knee but maintained a Cursebreaker's defense posture, his wand tracing counter-runes in the air. Fleur combined Vila magic with goblin protections, creating a shimmering barrier around herself. Volkov stood in the center, drawing power from the orbs, his eyes now glowing with the same light that filled the room. "You cannot fight it forever, Harry. The connection is already forming." Harry felt it, tendrils of magic weaving into his own, foreign yet somehow familiar. Images flashed through his mind, knowledge not his own, power beyond what he'd ever experienced, secrets of magic long forgotten. With horror, he realized what was happening. Volkov was creating the network, using them as unwilling conduits, and it was working. "Fleur!" Harry called out. "The orbs. They're tethered to their original locations." Fleur's eyes widened with understanding. "Break the tether." Bill caught on immediately. "Target the runic signatures," he shouted to Tonks. "Each orb has a unique magical address." Understanding the plan, Harry focused all his concentration on the orb directly connected to him. Rather than fighting the magic flowing into him, he followed it back to its source, tracing the magical signature to its core. There, a complex runic pattern pulsing at the center of the orb. Similar to what he'd seen in the Department of Mysteries, but with subtle differences that must relate to its original location. "Now!" Harry shouted, raising his wand. As one, they cast targeted disruption spells at each orb's runic signature. The magic they sent was precise, surgical, not meant to destroy but to disconnect. Volkov realized their intent too late. "No," he shouted, attempting to reinforce the connections. The first orb shuddered, its light fluctuating as Bill's spell hit its mark. The second, targeted by Fleur and Tonks together, began to spin erratically. Harry focused everything he had on the third, channeling not just magical skill but his connection to the house itself, his home, his sanctuary, claimed through blood and choice. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sound like crystal cracking, the orb's perfect triangular formation collapsed. The beams connecting them to each person flickered and died. The orbs themselves didn't shatter but instead reverted to a dormant state, their inner galaxies now swirling slowly, contained once more. Volkov staggered, the sudden disconnection clearly painful. His face contorted with fury and disbelief. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice ragged. "Stopped you," Harry said simply, keeping his wand trained on Volkov even as exhaustion threatened to overtake him. The drawing room door burst open as aura reinforcements finally arrived, led by Robards himself. They quickly secured the room, taking the stunned assistants into custody. Volkov, seeing himself surrounded, straightened his posture with remarkable composure. "This is merely a setback," he said to Harry, his voice low enough that only those closest could hear. "The convergence will come again. And next time, I'll ensure you understand exactly what you're rejecting." Before anyone could react, Volkov flicked his wrist. A hidden portkey activated, something small concealed in his palm, and with a flash, he vanished. "Damn it!" Robard swore. How did he have an unauthorized portkey? "He's been planning this for months, maybe years," Harry said wearily. "Probably had contingencies we haven't even thought of yet." Tonks moved to Harry's side, checking him for injuries. "You okay?" "Tired," he admitted. "That was intense." Fleur and Bill joined them, both looking equally drained. The magical backlash had affected them all. "The orbs are stable for now," Bill reported. "But they need to be returned to the department immediately. They're still dangerous." Robards nodded, assigning orders to carefully contain and transport the artifacts. The room buzzed with activity as evidence was collected and the scene secured. "You four," Robards said to Harry, Tonks, Fleur, and Bill, "go get checked out by healers." "That's an order. Full debriefing tomorrow morning." Too exhausted to argue, they complied, allowing junior Aurors to escort them to St. Mungo's for examination. Hours later, cleared by the healers and assured that the magical exposure had left no lasting damage, Harry sat in the hospital waiting area with Tonks beside him. Bill had already left to file preliminary reports with Gringotts about the magical artifacts involved. Fleur had been detained longer by the healers, her unique Vila physiology requiring additional tests. "Quite a day," Tonks said, leaning her head against Harry's shoulder. "Quite a 3 days," Harry corrected with a tired smile. "We stopped him," Tonks pointed out. "That's what matters." "For now," Harry agreed, though concern lingered in his voice. "He's still out there. Still planning. And we'll stop him again," Tonks said with quiet confidence. "Together." Harry turned to look at her, struck again by her resilience and strength. Even exhausted, hair faded to its natural brown, she radiated determination that inspired him. "Thank you," he said softly. "For having my back today. For everything." Tonks smiled, her eyes warm. "Always, Potter. It's what partners do." The word partners hung between them, laden with multiple meanings now. Before Harry could respond, he caught sight of Fleur approaching from the treatment area. She looked tired but composed, her silver blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "The healers have finally released me," she announced, sitting on Harry's other side. Apparently, Vila respond differently to magical network attempts. They wanted to document everything for their research. "Are you okay?" Harry asked, genuinely concerned. "Yes," Fleur assured him. "Just tired. And relieved we stopped Volkov's ritual." "Do you think he'll try again?" Tonks asked. Fleur nodded soberly. "Almost certainly. Men like him don't abandon their visions easily." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, three people united by the day's events and something more complex growing between them. "I should find somewhere to stay tonight," Fleur said eventually. "My apartment is being checked for magical tampering since Volkov knew so much about all of us." "Same with my place," Tonks added. "Standard protocol after direct confrontation with a dark wizard." Harry looked between them, decision made easily. "You can both stay at Grimmauld Place," he offered. "The Auror team will be finished securing it by now, and it's probably the safest location in London at the moment." The invitation hung in the air, innocent on the surface but weighted with unspoken possibilities. "That would be most practical," Fleur agreed after a brief hesitation. "Thank you, Harry." "Yeah, thanks," Tonks added, her eyes meeting his with silent understanding. Practical. Grimmauld Place had been thoroughly examined and cleared by the Auror team when they arrived. The drawing room was sealed off as an active investigation site, but the rest of the house was accessible and secure. Harry showed Fleur to one of the guest rooms on the second floor, then led Tonks to another down the hall. The arrangement seemed the most proper given the ambiguity of their current situation, though part of him longed for the comfort of Tonks' presence as he'd experienced the previous night. After ensuring both women were settled, Harry retreated to his own room, exhaustion finally overtaking him. He managed only to remove his shoes before collapsing onto his bed, still fully clothed. Sleep claimed him immediately, but it wasn't peaceful. Images from the day swirled in his dreams, the orbs connecting to his magical core, Volkov's cold eyes glowing with power, the feeling of foreign magic invading his mind. He tossed and turned, caught in the grip of subconscious fears. A soft knock at his door pulled him from the nightmare. Harry sat up, disoriented, unsure how much time had passed. The knock came again, gentle but persistent. "Come in," he called, reaching for his wand by habit. The door opened to reveal Fleur, wearing a borrowed dressing gown over what appeared to be transfigured nightclothes. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, and in the dim light, she looked almost ethereal. "I heard you," she said softly. "From my room. You were calling out in your sleep." Harry ran a hand through his hair, embarrassed. "Sorry. Nightmares. After today, it would be strange not to have them," Fleur said, stepping into the room but remaining near the door. "I cannot sleep either." Harry shifted to sit against the headboard. "Do you want to talk about it?" Fleur hesitated, then moved to perch carefully on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. "That magic, what Volkov attempted to do to us, it felt invasive," Harry supplied when she struggled to find the word. "Like a violation." "Yes," she agreed with visible relief that he understood. "But also, tempting, in a way. Did you feel it too? The knowledge that flowed through the connection?" Harry nodded slowly. "Ancient magic. Powerful secrets. Things I've never imagined. It is why he is so dangerous," Fleur said softly. "He offers something many wizards would find irresistible. But at the cost of freedom," Harry pointed out. "Of autonomy." "Yes," Fleur agreed. "No matter how beautiful the cage, it is still a cage." They fell silent, the shared experience creating an intimacy between them that transcended physical proximity. Another soft knock interrupted the moment. The door, still partially open, revealed Tonks standing hesitantly in the hallway. Her hair was a subdued pink, reflecting her uncertain mood. "Sorry," she said, taking in the scene. "I heard voices. Wanted to make sure everything was okay." "Nightmares," Harry explained again. "We were just talking about what happened today. Mind if I join?" Tonks asked, her eyes meeting Fleur's briefly. "Please," Fleur said, surprising both of them with her ready acceptance. Tonks entered, closing the door behind her. She hesitated briefly before sitting on the other side of the bed, creating a triangle of sorts between the three of them. "I keep seeing those orbs," Tonks admitted. "Feeling that magic trying to rewrite something inside me." "Me too," Harry said. Fleur was just saying how invasive it felt. "Like having someone else in your head," Tonks agreed with a shudder. "Reminded me of stories about the Imperieuse curse during the war." Fleur nodded. "It is similar magic, I think. Control through connection rather than pure domination, but still control." The conversation flowed naturally after that, the three of them processing the day's events together. They discussed Volkov's motivations, the nature of the magic he'd attempted, and the wider implications if he succeeded in creating his network. As they talked, the initial awkwardness dissolved. They shifted positions for comfort, ending up sitting against the headboard, Harry in the middle with Tonks and Fleur on either side. The arrangement felt both strange and somehow right. "We make a good team," Harry observed during a lull in the conversation. "The three of us. Today proved that." "We do," Fleur agreed. "Different strengths, different perspectives, but complementary." "That's one way of putting it," Tonks said with a hint of her usual humor. She glanced at Harry, then at Fleur. "Though I think we should address the hippogriff in the room." Fleur raised an eyebrow. "Hippogriff?" "She means the obvious tension between the three of us," Harry explained, his heart rate increasing. "The personal aspect." "Ah," Fleur said, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Yes, perhaps we should." An awkward silence fell, no one quite sure how to begin this unprecedented conversation. "I care for Harry," Tonks finally said directly, characteristically cutting to the heart of the matter. "As more than just a partner or friend. That's my card on the table." Fleur nodded, seeming to appreciate the straightforwardness. "I have developed feelings for him as well," she admitted. "Though they are newer, they are no less genuine." Both women looked at Harry expectantly. "I have feelings for both of you," he confessed, the words both terrifying and liberating to speak aloud. "Different in nature, but equally real and equally strong. I didn't plan this, didn't expect it, but here we are. Another silence, this one filled with possibility rather than awkwardness. So what do we do about it? Tonks asked practically. Traditional solutions would say you need to choose, Harry. But perhaps tradition is not always wise, Fleur suggested carefully. The heart is not so simple as to love only one person at a time. Harry looked between them, amazed at their maturity and openness. I don't want to hurt either of you. Or come between your friendship. We're adults, Tonks pointed out. Complicated adults with complicated lives. Who have just faced death together, Fleur added. Such experiences have a way of clarifying what matters. The implication hung in the air, that perhaps conventional arrangements weren't the only possibility. Are you suggesting? Harry began, hardly daring to articulate the thought. That we figure this out together, Tonks finished for him. Day by day. Without forcing choices before they're ready to be made. Fleur nodded in agreement. Life is too short and too precious to sacrifice genuine connection for convention's sake. Harry felt something tight in his chest loosen, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. I'd like that. To see where this leads, without pressure or expectations. A yawn from Tonks broke the serious moment. Sorry, she said sheepishly. Magical exhaustion catching up with me. With all of us, I think, Fleur agreed, looking equally tired. Harry hesitated, then offered tentatively, you could both stay. Just asleep, he clarified quickly. After today, I think we could all use the comfort. The offer hung in the air, unprecedented yet somehow perfectly natural given all they'd experienced together. Tonks and Fleur exchanged a look, measuring, assessing, coming to an understanding of sorts. I'd like that, Tonks said finally. As would I, Fleur agreed softly. They arranged themselves carefully on the large bed, Harry in the middle, Tonks curled against his left side, Fleur beside him on the right, maintaining a slight distance but close enough to share warmth. The arrangement was innocent yet profoundly intimate, a physical manifestation of the emotional connection growing between them. Good night, Harry murmured, feeling an unexpected peace despite the day's dangers and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Good night, they echoed, their voices blending in the darkness. As sleep claimed them, the nightmares stayed at bay, replaced by a sense of security and belonging that none of them had expected to find. Morning light filtered through the curtains, waking Harry gradually. He became aware of warmth on either side of him, Tonks curled against his chest, and Fleur's hand resting lightly on his arm. During the night, they had shifted closer together, finding comfort in each other's presence. For a moment, Harry simply lay there, taking in the extraordinary situation. 24 hours ago, they had been preparing to face a dangerous dark wizard. Now they were here, in his bed, the boundaries of their relationship fundamentally shifted. Fleur stirred first, her blue eyes opening slowly. She took in their positions with a moment of surprise, then a soft smile. Bonjour, she whispered, careful not to wake Tonks. Morning, Harry replied just as quietly. Sleep okay? She nodded. Better than I expected, given everything. Tonks mumbled something incoherent and snuggled closer to Harry, her hair shifting to a contented yellow even in sleep. The sight made both Harry and Fleur smile. She is rather adorable when not setting things on fire, Fleur observed with gentle humor. I heard that, Tonks muttered, opening one eye. And I'll have you know I haven't set anything on fire accidentally in at least a month. The three of them laughed softly, the moment remarkable for its lack of awkwardness. They should have felt strange, embarrassed even, but instead there was only a comfortable camaraderie tinged with new awareness. We should get up, Harry said eventually. The debriefing's at 10. And we all need showers and breakfast, Tonks added practically. They disentangled themselves reluctantly, each heading to separate bathrooms to prepare for the day. Harry found himself moving through his morning routine with an unexpected lightness despite the serious situation with Volkov still looming. In the kitchen, They worked together preparing breakfast with comfortable efficiency, Tonks making coffee, Fleur conjuring a simple but elegant meal from Harry's limited supplies, Harry setting the table. It felt domestic in a way that should have been strange but somehow wasn't. "What happens now?" Harry asked as they ate. "With us, I mean." Tonks looked thoughtful. "We take it day by day, like we said. No pressure, no expectations. But with honesty," Fleur added. "Complete honesty between us about our feelings as they develop. And discretion," Tonks suggested. "At least until we figure out what this is." The Daily Prophet would have a field day if they caught wind of this. Harry grimaced at the thought. "Agreed. This stays between us for now." They finished breakfast and headed to the ministry together, careful to arrive separately to avoid speculation. The debriefing was long and thorough, with experts from multiple departments analyzing every aspect of Volkov's failed ritual. Harry presented his report professionally, making no mention of the personal developments between him, Tonks, and Fleur. When questioned about Volkov's apparent interest in him specifically, Harry kept his answers focused on the tactical aspects rather than the emotional impact. "Based on all evidence," Robards concluded after nearly 3 hours, "we believe Volkov will attempt another convergence ritual during the next astronomically significant event, likely the autumn equinox in September. That gives us approximately 3 months to locate him and neutralize the threat. He'll be more careful next time," Harry pointed out. "More secretive about his location and plans. Then we'll need to be more clever about finding him," Robards replied. "I'm establishing a dedicated task force effective immediately. Potter, you'll lead it. Tonks, you're second in command. Ms. Delacour, we've arranged with Gringotts for your continued consultation on the magical artifacts angle." The three exchanged subtle glances, their new personal connection adding another dimension to this professional assignment. "We'll need additional resources," Harry said, focusing on the task. "Intelligence from Eastern Europe especially." "You'll have them," Robards promised. "Whatever you need to end this threat." As the meeting concluded, Bill approached them. "I'm heading back to Egypt tomorrow," he told them. "But I've arranged for all my research on ley lines and magical convergence points to be available to your team." "Thanks, Bill," Harry said sincerely. "We couldn't have stopped the ritual without your expertise." Bill grinned. "Always happy to help thwart dark wizards. It's practically the family business." He glanced between the three of them with a slightly puzzled expression, as if sensing something had changed but unable to identify what. "Take care of each other," he said finally, with a meaningful look at Fleur that suggested lingering protective feelings despite their divorce. "We will," Fleur assured him with a warm smile. After Bill departed, Harry, Tonks, and Fleur found themselves alone in the conference room. The professional formality they'd maintained during the debriefing softened into something more personal. "So we're a task force now," Tonks remarked. "Working together officially. It will make certain aspects of our situation more convenient," Fleur noted with a hint of humor. Harry shook his head, amazed at how they were navigating this unprecedented arrangement. "Are we really doing this? The three of us?" Tonks grinned, her hair shifting to a vibrant purple that reflected her upbeat mood. "Looks that way, Potter." "Scared?" "Terrified," Harry admitted honestly. "But in a good way." "As am I," Fleur confessed. "But some things are worth the risk, non?" Harry looked between these two remarkable women, Tonks with her vibrant energy and unflinching loyalty, Fleur with her elegant strength and perceptive intelligence. Both so different, both so important to him in ways he was only beginning to understand. "Definitely worth it," he agreed softly. As they left the conference room together, heading toward their new shared mission, Harry felt a sense of purpose that went beyond catching dark wizards. For the first time since the war, he was moving towards something, not just away from the past. Whatever happened with Volkov, whatever challenges their unconventional relationship might face, Harry knew one thing with certainty: he was no longer facing the future alone. And that made all the difference. In his office at an undisclosed location, Nikolai Volkov stood before a map marked with arcane symbols. The failed ritual had been a setback, but not an insurmountable one. He had learned valuable information about Harry Potter's magical signature, about the specific nature of his resistance. Next time, he would be prepared. Next time, he would succeed. And if Harry Potter would not join willingly, there were other ways to ensure his participation. Volkov's gaze lingered on notes he'd made about Potter's companions, the Metamorphmagus and the Half-Vela. Such interesting magical signatures. Such useful leverage. He smiled coldly and continued his calculations. The equinox was coming, and with it, another chance to reshape the magical world forever. Chapter 3, True Hearts revealed the summer passed in a blur of intense work punctuated by equally intense personal moments. Harry's task force headquarters occupied a magically expanded section of the Aura Department, walls covered with maps tracking magical disturbances across Europe, shelves filled with research on magical networks and ancient convergence rituals. 3 months of dedicated investigation had yielded progress but no definitive location for Volkov. The Dark Wizard had gone completely underground after the failed ritual at Grimmauld Place, his network suddenly silent. Harry stood before the main tracking map, frustration evident in the tense set of his shoulders. Red pins marked confirmed Volkov sightings, distressingly few. Blue pins indicated probable locations of his followers. Yellow pins showed suspected targets for the Equinox ritual, now just 3 days away. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," Tonks remarked as she entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Her hair was a focused midnight blue today, pulled back in a practical ponytail. Harry accepted the coffee gratefully. "Just trying to see the pattern we're missing." "Maybe there isn't one," Tonks suggested, studying the map beside him. "Maybe he's being deliberately random to throw us off." "That would be consistent with his intelligence profile," Harry agreed, taking a sip of coffee. "Where's Fleur?" "Meeting with the Goblin Liaison. Apparently, they've detected unusual magical signatures at several bank branches across Europe. Could be related to Volkov's preparations." Harry nodded, making a mental note to follow up on that lead. The 3 of them had fallen into an effective working rhythm over the summer, Tonks handling field operations and informant networks, Fleur coordinating international intelligence and artifact analysis, Harry overseeing the overall strategy and liaising with ministry leadership. Their personal relationship had evolved with similar efficiency, finding balance in its unconventionality. Some nights were spent as a trio, dinner, conversation, and the comfort of shared bed space that had become increasingly intimate as trust deepened. Other times, Harry spent evenings with just Tonks or just Fleur, exploring the unique dynamics of each pairing. They'd maintained their promise of complete honesty, addressing jealousy or insecurity directly when it arose. To Harry's surprise, such moments had been rare and quickly resolved. Perhaps it was the intensity of their shared mission that put personal concerns into perspective, or perhaps they'd simply found a dynamic that worked for their specific personalities. "You've got that look," Tonks observed, bumping his shoulder gently with hers. "What look?" "The one where you're overthinking everything," she said with a knowing smile. "Half case, half us." Harry chuckled. "Am I that transparent?" "Only to those who know you," Tonks replied, her eyes warm with affection. The door opened again, and Fleur entered. She wore the formal blue robes of Gringotts, her hair in its customary elegant knot for professional settings. Despite the formality of her appearance, her smile was intimate as she greeted them. "The goblins have confirmed it," she announced without preamble. "Someone has been testing the magical defenses at Gringotts branches in Prague, Geneva, and Athens. Not attempting to break in, just probing. Looking for weaknesses," Harry surmised. "Or testing a new magical technique." "Exactly," Fleur agreed. "The magical signature matches what we recorded during the Grimmauld Place incident." "Volkov himself, not his followers," Tonks concluded. "Getting bold again." Harry turned back to the map, adding 3 new pins to mark the Gringotts locations. These are all major magical convergence points, he noted. Ancient cities built on intersections of ley lines. Could he be planning simultaneous rituals? Tonks wondered. Hit multiple targets at once? Fleur shook her head. The equinox convergence requires precision. Splitting focus would weaken the effect. Unless that's exactly what he wants us to think, Harry said slowly, a troubling thought forming. What if these probes are deliberate? Meant to be detected, meant to send us scrambling across Europe? While he targets somewhere completely different, Tonks finished, catching on immediately. We need to look at this from his perspective, Harry decided. After the failure at Grimmauld Place, what would be his priority for the equinox ritual? Control, Fleur said decisively. The orbs were unstable last time because you fought against the connection. He needs either your willing participation or a way to neutralize my resistance, Harry concluded grimly. You think you're still his primary target? Tonks asked, concern evident in her voice. I know I am, Harry replied. Everything else is secondary to him. The probes, the international movement, it's all distraction. The door burst open, interrupting their discussion. Junior Auror Wesley stood there, breathing hard. Sir, we've got a situation. Magical discharge detected at 3 locations simultaneously, Prague, Geneva, and Athens. Timing's a bit convenient, Tonks muttered. Dispatch teams to all 3 sites, Harry instructed. But tell them to expect diversion tactics. The real target could be elsewhere. Yes, sir, Wesley confirmed before hurrying away. We're missing something, Harry said, returning to the map. Something obvious. Fleur moved to stand beside him, her eyes scanning the pins. The autumn equinox is the opposite of the spring equinox, she observed. A time of balance shifting toward darkness rather than light. Perhaps Volkov's approach will be inverted as well. Meaning? Tonks prompted. Last time, he came to you, Fleur elaborated, looking at Harry. To your home, your power base. Perhaps this time. He'll try to draw me to his, Harry finished, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. Not a public location or historical site, but somewhere with personal significance to him. Tonks snapped her fingers. Durmstrang. He was a professor there for decades. Too obvious, Harry shook his head. And too well guarded now. It would have to be somewhere more private, more connected to his personal magical development. Fleur's eyes widened with sudden realization. The intelligence reports mentioned a family estate in the Carpathian Mountains. His mother's ancestral home, where he first began experimenting with magical networks as a young wizard. That's it, Harry said with certainty. That's where he'll perform the ritual. I'll contact Romanian magical authorities immediately, Tonks said, moving toward the communication station. Wait, Harry cautioned. If we show our hand too early, he'll just change locations again. We need to be strategic about this. What do you suggest? Fleur asked. Harry studied the map, mind racing through possibilities. We send the official response teams to the 3 Gringotts locations as planned. Meanwhile, the 3 of us will reconnoiter the Carpathian estate, just surveillance, no engagement unless absolutely necessary. A small team is less likely to trigger his detection wards, Tonks agreed. And the 3 of us have proven effective against his magic before, Fleur added. Harry nodded. We leave in an hour. Pack for mountain conditions and extended surveillance. Full communication gear, emergency port keys, the works. As they prepared to depart, Harry felt the familiar pre-mission tension, part anticipation, part anxiety. But this time there was something else, a nagging sense of unease he couldn't quite place. Something about the situation felt off, too convenient somehow. He pushed the feeling aside as they gathered their equipment. Whatever Volkov was planning, they'd face it together. That had been enough so far. The Carpathian Mountains loomed dark and forbidding in the late afternoon light. Harry, Tonks, and Fleur had apparat to a designated safe point 2 miles from the suspected location of Volkov's estate, the coordinates provided by Romanian magical intelligence. Quite the cheery neighborhood, Tonks commented as they surveyed the dense forest and craggy peaks surrounding them. I can see why a dark wizard would feel at home. The mountains have powerful natural magic, Fleur observed, her wand out as she performed detection spells. The ley lines here are some of the strongest in Eastern Europe. Harry consulted the magical map they'd been provided. The estate should be just beyond that ridge. We'll approach on foot from here to avoid triggering any transportation wards. They moved through the forest with practiced stealth, Harry in the lead, Tonks on the right flank, Fleur on the left. Years of Auror training had given Harry and Tonks a smooth, efficient movement pattern, and Fleur had adapted quickly to their tactical approach over the summer. As they crested the ridge, a sprawling stone mansion came into view, nestled in a valley with mountains rising on all sides. The building had a distinctly medieval appearance, with towers and crenellations that would have looked at home in a fairy tale, if not for the distinctive shimmer of powerful protective magic surrounding the grounds. Impressive wards, Fleur murmured, her eyes narrowed as she assessed the magical defenses. Multiple layers, some quite ancient. Can you identify the gaps? Harry asked. Fleur performed a series of complex wand work, her expression one of intense concentration. There, she finally said, pointing to a section of the boundary near what appeared to be an overgrown garden. The wards are thinner there. Possibly an old servant's entrance that's been forgotten. Good work, Harry said. We'll set up observation there. Tonks, what do you sense? Tonks, whose Auror specialty included threat detection, frowned slightly. Something's off. The magical signature is right for Volkov, but it's... I don't know, too steady. Too perfect. Harry had learned to trust Tonks' instincts implicitly. Explain. Real occupancy creates fluctuations in magical output, she elaborated. People move, cast spells, affect the ambient magic. This is too consistent. Like a recording, Harry concluded, his earlier sense of unease returning tenfold. A magical signature left running to make us think he's here. A trap, Fleur said grimly. Before they could retreat, the air around them shimmered. Harry felt a familiar sensation, anti-apparition wards snapping into place, boxing them in. Move, he shouted, already running for cover as the first spells shot from the trees around them. They scattered, diving behind rocks and trees as masked figures emerged from concealed positions. Not Volkov himself, Harry noted as he returned fire, but definitely his followers, at least a dozen of them. It's an ambush. Tonks called from her position, her hair flaring battle-red as she cast shield charms and stunning spells in rapid succession. Fleur had taken refuge behind a large boulder, her wand work combining goblin shielding techniques with lethal precision curses that kept 3 attackers pinned down. Harry fought with the fluid efficiency born of years of experience, his magic responsive and powerful. He stunned 2 attackers in quick succession, then conjured a whip of magical fire that drove back 3 more. Emergency port keys, he shouted to the others. The standard protocol in an ambush situation, activate the emergency transport and regroup at the safe house. Tonks reached for hers, then shook her head in frustration. They're not working. Something's blocking them. Mine as well, Fleur confirmed, deflecting a nasty cutting curse. Fall back to the trees. Harry directed. We'll create a defensive perimeter. They fought their way toward each other, moving in a coordinated retreat that kept their attackers at bay. Years of working together had made Harry and Tonks an exceptionally effective combat team, and Fleur had integrated her unique magical approach seamlessly. They had almost reached the tree line when Harry felt it, a distinctive magical pressure unlike anything their attackers had used so far. The air around him seemed to thicken, making movement suddenly difficult. Harry! Tonks called in warning, seeing it too, a shimmering dome of magic forming around him, separating him from the others. Harry tried to break through, casting his most powerful dispelling charms against the barrier. The magic held, expanding to create a complete sphere around him. Through the distortion, he could see Tonks and Fleur attacking the dome from the outside, their spells flaring against it without effect. A figure stepped from the shadows beyond the battle, tall, distinguished, unmistakable. Volkov. He approached the magical sphere calmly, as if taking a pleasant evening stroll rather than walking through a battlefield. With casual waves of his wand, he redirected his own followers' spells away from himself. "Mr. Potter," he greeted, his voice somehow penetrating the barrier while other sounds were muted. "Right on schedule." This was your plan all along, Harry realized, still attempting to breach the sphere from within. The probes at the banks, the estate, all to lure us here. Indeed, Volkov acknowledged with a small bow. Though I expected you might bring a larger force. Your confidence in your small team is either admirable or foolish. Outside the sphere, Harry could see the battle intensifying. Tonks and Fleur fought with increasing ferocity, trying to reach him while holding off the attackers. They worked in perfect tandem, Tonks providing offensive pressure while Fleur maintained defensive shields, then switching seamlessly. "They're quite remarkable," Volkov observed, following Harry's gaze. "The Metamorphmagus and the Half-Vela. Such unique magical signatures. I've been studying them since our last encounter." A chill ran through Harry at the casual statement. "Leave them out of this," he said firmly. "Whatever you want with me, it has nothing to do with them." "On the contrary," Volkov replied. "Their connection to you is precisely what makes them valuable. Magical bonds forged through emotion are extraordinarily powerful conduits." With a complex motion of his wand, Volkov caused the sphere to begin moving, floating away from the battlefield with Harry trapped inside. Harry redoubled his efforts to break free, channeling his magic against the walls of his prison. "You won't escape by brute force," Volkov informed him. "The sphere is designed to absorb and redirect magical energy. The more power you exert, the stronger it becomes." Through the distortion, Harry caught a last glimpse of Tonks and Fleur. They had noticed his movement and were fighting desperately to follow, but Volkov's followers had formed a wall between them, preventing pursuit. "They'll find me," Harry said with absolute conviction. "And when they do, you'll regret taking me." Volkov smiled, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. "I'm counting on it, Mr. Potter. Their pursuit is an essential component of tonight's ritual." Before Harry could respond, the sphere accelerated, whisking him away into the gathering darkness of the Carpathian night. Tonks cursed violently as Harry disappeared into the forest, trapped in Volkov's magical sphere. Beside her, Fleur cast a wide-area stunning spell that briefly cleared a path through their attackers. "We need to follow them," Tonks shouted, already moving forward. "Wait." Fleur grabbed her arm. "The anti-apparition ward is weakening with Volkov's departure. I can feel it." Tonks paused, trusting Fleur's sensitivity to magical fluctuations. "How long?" 30 seconds, perhaps less, Fleur estimated, maintaining a shield charm as renewed spells flew toward them. "Then we hold," Tonks decided grimly, morphing her features to match one of their attackers, creating momentary confusion in their ranks. They fought with desperate efficiency, buying time as the magical pressure around them gradually lessened. The moment Fleur nodded sharply, indicating the wards had fallen, Tonks grabbed her hand. "Now," she cried, and they disapparated with a crack just as their position was overrun. They reappeared a mile away, on a rocky outcropping with a view of the valley. Tonks immediately pulled out a compact magical locator, activating the tracking charm embedded in Harry's aura badge. "Anything?" Fleur asked tensely, keeping watch for pursuers. Tonks shook her head in frustration. "Nothing. Volkov must be blocking it." "We need help," Fleur said, already reaching for her emergency communication device, a goblin-made medallion that could transmit messages regardless of most magical interference. "No time," Tonks countered. "The equinox alignment begins at midnight, less than 4 hours from now." By the time reinforcements arrive and organize, it could be too late. Just the two of us against Volkov and his entire network? Fleur questioned, though her tone held determination rather than doubt. Would you rather wait? Tonks challenged. Fleur's expression hardened. Never. But we need a plan, not just courage. Tonks nodded, acknowledging the sense in Fleur's words. Despite their initial wariness of each other months ago, they'd developed genuine respect and trust, personally and professionally. If anyone could help her save Harry, it was Fleur. Volkov needs a place of power for the ritual, Tonks reasoned. Somewhere connected to the ley lines. Fleur closed her eyes, concentrating. As part Vila, her sensitivity to natural magic was exceptional, a gift she'd honed through years of curse-breaking work. There, she said finally, pointing to a jagged peak several miles distant. That mountain has the strongest magical convergence in the region. If he's planning to harness the equinox energy, that's where he'll be. Can you apparate us there? Tonks asked. I don't have a clear enough sense of the location. Yes, Fleur confirmed. But we should arrive some distance away. Volkov will have proximity wards. Agreed. Half a mile out, approach on foot. Tonks checked her wand and equipment with quick efficiency. Ready? Fleur grasped her hand firmly. For Harry, she said simply. For Harry, Tonks echoed, and they vanished with a quiet crack. The cave system within the mountain was extensive and ancient, its walls inscribed with magical symbols that predated modern wizarding society. Harry could feel the raw power thrumming through the stone as Volkov guided his floating prison deeper into the labyrinth. They finally emerged into a vast central chamber where the ceiling opened to the night sky, framing stars that seemed impossibly bright and close. In the center of the chamber stood a stone altar, around which three familiar orbs floated, the nexus points stolen from the Department of Mysteries. Volkov released the sphere with a flick of his wand, allowing Harry to drop to the ground. Before Harry could react, magical restraints snapped around his wrists and ankles, binding him securely. Unnecessary precautions, Volkov commented as Harry tested the restraints. You can't leave the ritual circle now that you're within it. But I've found that physical restraints help focus the mind on the realities of one situation. Harry took in his surroundings, analyzing possible escape routes, weaknesses in the setup, anything that might help. Several of Volkov's followers stood at the perimeter of the chamber, maintaining complex ward patterns with synchronized wand work. You won't succeed, Harry stated flatly. Whatever you're planning, whatever you think you'll achieve with this ritual, it won't work. Such certainty, Volkov replied, sounding almost amused as he made adjustments to the floating orbs. Based on what? Your previous victory. That was merely a preliminary test, Harry, may I call you Harry? We'll be sharing quite an intimate magical connection shortly, after all. I'd rather you didn't, Harry said coldly. Volkov shrugged elegantly. As you wish, Mr. Potter. Though I hope you'll come to see me as a colleague rather than an adversary by the end of tonight's work. Kidnapping isn't usually how colleagues treat each other, Harry pointed out. An unfortunate necessity, Volkov said with what appeared to be genuine regret. I would have preferred your willing participation, but the equinox waits for no wizard's convenience. He moved to the altar, unrolling a scroll covered in complex runic sequences. Do you know what makes you unique, Mr. Potter? From a magical perspective? Harry remained silent, using the conversation as cover while he worked wandlessly on the restraints. The magic binding him was sophisticated but not impenetrable. It's not just your raw power, though that is considerable, Volkov continued, unbothered by Harry's silence. It's your magical adaptability. You've absorbed and integrated multiple magical influences throughout your life, your mother's protection, Voldemort's fragmented soul, the Elder Wand's allegiance. Your magical signature is remarkably complex and resilient. Thanks for the analysis, Harry said dryly. Was there a point to it? Indeed, Volkov replied, gesturing to the orbs. The nexus points are fundamentally unstable when connected. They require an anchoring force, a magical signature complex enough to harmonize conflicting energies. His eyes fixed on Harry with disturbing intensity. You are the ideal conduit, Mr. Potter. The perfect bridge between ancient power and modern application. And if I refuse to cooperate? Harry challenged. Refusal isn't quite possible in this context, Volkov explained, as if discussing an academic problem rather than magical coercion. The ritual doesn't require your conscious participation, merely your presence. Though I admit, willing cooperation would make the process less uncomfortable for you. He checked a sophisticated magical timepiece. We have 2 hours until perfect alignment. Enough time for you to understand what we're really trying to accomplish here. With a wave of his wand, Volkov conjured a three-dimensional magical model of interconnected light points that hovered between them. The current magical world is fragmented, he explained, indicating the separate clusters of light. Knowledge siloed, power restricted, potential unrealized. The model shifted, the points connecting into a complex network with energy flowing freely between them. What I propose is unification. A network where magical knowledge and power flow without arbitrary restrictions. Where a healer in London could instantly access a breakthrough made in Tokyo. Where magical strength could be shared in times of need. Despite himself, Harry found the vision compelling. The model showed magical cooperation on a scale never before achieved, barriers of language, distance, and tradition dissolved in favor of a united magical community. It sounds utopian, Harry observed cautiously. All great advances begin as utopian dreams, Volkov replied. Apparition, the Fleur network, even wands themselves were once considered impossible or dangerous innovations. There's a difference between inventing new spells and forcibly connecting wizards' minds, Harry countered. Volkov sighed. Force is merely the first stage, regrettable but necessary. Once the benefits become apparent, participation will be enthusiastic and voluntary. You're asking people to surrender their magical autonomy, Harry said. Their privacy, their individuality. I'm asking them to evolve, Volkov corrected. To transcend limitations that have kept magical society stagnant for centuries. Harry felt the restraints weakening slightly as his wandless magic worked against them. Just a little more time. And you'd control this network, he pressed, keeping Volkov engaged in the philosophical debate. You'd decide who has access to what knowledge, what power. Initially, yes, Volkov acknowledged. Until the system stabilizes. Then it would become self-regulating, a true collective consciousness of magical beings. With you at its center, Harry noted. Volkov inclined his head slightly. Someone must guide the initial implementation. My research, my vision, it makes sense that I would fulfill that role. And if your guidance becomes permanent? If you decide certain wizards shouldn't have full access? If you use the network to eliminate those who disagree with your vision? A flash of irritation crossed Volkov's usually composed features. You persist in viewing this through the lens of your experience with Voldemort. I am not seeking domination for its own sake, Mr. Potter. I am seeking transformation, for all of magical society, myself included. One of the followers approached, murmuring something to Volkov. He nodded, checking his timepiece again. We should begin the preliminary alignments, he announced, turning away from Harry. Prepare the containment field. As Volkov became engaged with the ritual preparations, Harry redoubled his efforts on the restraints. The binding on his right wrist had weakened significantly, just a little more concentration. A sudden commotion from the tunnel entrance drew everyone's attention. Shouts, flashes of spell light, then silence. Volkov gestured sharply, and 2 followers moved to investigate. They didn't return. Instead, a wave of dense fog rolled into the chamber, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. From within the fog came the distinctive sounds of combat, cries of surprise, bodies falling. Harry felt the restraint on his right wrist give way. Without hesitation, he worked on the others, taking advantage of the distraction. The fog began to clear in patches, revealing glimpses of what was happening. A figure with bright red hair, Tonks in battle mode, moved with lethal efficiency through Volkov's followers. On the opposite side of the chamber, what appeared to be a partial Vela transformation created havoc, Fleur, drawing on her heritage's more combat-oriented aspects. They had come for him, just as he knew they would. And they were magnificent. Volkov observed the chaos with remarkable composure. Right on schedule, he murmured, almost to himself. The emotional connection proves its power once again. With growing horror, Harry realized this too had been part of Volkov's plan. The attack, the kidnapping, it wasn't just about securing Harry for the ritual. It was about drawing Tonks and Fleur into it as well. Stop! Harry shouted toward the fighting figures. It's a trap. He wants you here. Whether they heard him or not, the battle continued. Harry worked frantically at the remaining restraints, finally freeing himself as the fog dissipated completely. The chamber was now in disarray, most of Volkov's followers unconscious or bound by Tonks' specialized restraint spells. Tonks herself stood at one entrance to the chamber, bleeding from a cut on her cheek but looking fiercely triumphant. Fleur guarded the other entrance, her normally perfect appearance disheveled from combat, her wand trained on the remaining followers. Harry! Tonks called, spotting him free of the restraints. Stay back, he warned, already moving toward her. Volkov is exactly where he needs to be, Volkov completed, suddenly between them. With a complex wand movement, he activated a spell that sent pulses of energy through the chamber floor. The ritual circle around the altar flared to life, expanding rapidly to encompass not just Harry, but Tonks and Fleur as well. Lines of magical energy connected the three of them to the Nexus orbs, which had begun to spin and pulse with increasing intensity. Perfect, Volkov said with evident satisfaction. The triad is complete. Harry felt it immediately, the same invasive magical probing he'd experienced during the failed ritual at Grimmauld Place, but stronger, more focused. From the expressions on Tonks and Fleur's faces, they felt it too. What have you done? Fleur demanded, attempting to dispel the connection with goblin countermeasures. Created the ideal configuration, Volkov explained, moving to the altar. A magical triad of exceptional individuals, bound by genuine emotional connection. Far more stable than my original design. You planned this, Tonks accused, trying unsuccessfully to morph her way out of the magical binding. The ambush, the kidnapping, you wanted all three of us. Of course, Volkov confirmed. After observing your unique dynamic during our previous encounter, I realized the potential. Three magically gifted individuals with complementary abilities and genuine emotional bonds, the perfect foundation for my network. Harry met Tonks' eyes, then Fleur's, silent communication passing between them. Whatever Volkov had planned, they would resist together. The equinox alignment approaches, Volkov announced, checking his timepiece. In exactly 7 minutes, the convergence will reach its peak. When it does, the Nexus orbs will connect fully, and our magical signatures will merge into the Foundation network. It won't work, Harry stated with absolute certainty. We broke your connection last time. We'll do it again. Last time, you were unprepared and working separately, Volkov pointed out. This time, I've incorporated your emotional connection into the ritual itself. The stronger your feelings for each other, the stronger the network bond becomes. A terrible understanding dawned on Harry. Their greatest strength, their connection to each other, was being weaponized against them. The more we care, the more power he can draw, he explained quickly to Tonks and Fleur. Our emotions are amplifying the connection. Fleur's eyes widened. Then we must suppress the emotional bond temporarily. A clemency, Tonks agreed, already shifting her focus inward. Harry did the same, drawing on years of practice to compartmentalize his feelings, creating mental barriers between his emotions and his magical core. It was imperfect, he'd never mastered a clemency completely, but it was something. Volkov observed their efforts with academic interest. Fascinating approach, he commented. But ultimately futile. The connection exists at a level deeper than conscious thought. You cannot simply decide not to care for each other. The orbs spun faster, their light intensifying as the equinox alignment approached. Harry could feel the magical pressure building, pushing against his mental barriers, seeking the emotional connections he was trying to suppress. There must be another way, Fleur said urgently, maintaining her acclimacy while searching the ritual's setup for weaknesses. Harry studied the connections between them and the orbs, the flowing lines of magical energy. An idea began to form, risky, potentially dangerous, but possibly their only option. Instead of fighting the connection, he suggested quietly, so only Tonks and Fleur could hear, what if we redirect it? What do you mean? Tonks asked, wincing as the magical pressure increased. The ritual is using our emotional bonds to channel magical energy, Harry explained rapidly. But Volkov designed it assuming we'd resist. What if we do the opposite? Understanding dawned in Fleur's eyes. Amplify rather than suppress. Overload the system. Exactly, Harry confirmed. On my signal, drop all mental barriers and focus entirely on your feelings, for each other, for me, everything. That's insanely risky, Tonks pointed out. We could burn out magically if it backfires. Better than becoming permanent components in his network, Harry countered. The orbs were now spinning so rapidly they appeared as solid rings of light. Volkov stood at the altar, hands raised as he began the final incantation of the ritual. 2 minutes to convergence, he announced. Prepare for transcendence. Harry caught Tonks' eye, then Fleur's. A silent agreement passed between them, trust, commitment, and something deeper that had grown over their months together. Whatever happens, Harry told them, I love you both. Differently, uniquely, but completely. And we love you, Fleur replied softly. Both of us, Tonks confirmed with a fierce smile. In our own ways. The simple declaration seemed to strengthen them, even as the ritual magic pulled more insistently at their cores. 1 minute, Volkov intoned, oblivious to their quiet exchange. Harry focused inward, preparing himself. Instead of suppressing his feelings, he brought them to the forefront of his mind, his admiration for Tonks' resilience and honesty, his appreciation of Fleur's insight and quiet strength, the unique joy he found in their company individually and together. The love that had grown gradually but unmistakably over the summer months. 30 seconds, Volkov announced, his voice rising with anticipation. Harry met the eyes of the women he loved once more. Ready? They nodded in unison. 10 seconds, 5, 3, 2. Now! Harry shouted. As Volkov completed the final words of the ritual, all three simultaneously dropped their acclimacy barriers and projected their emotions outward. Not just their feelings for each other, but all the intensity of the past months, the fear, joy, desire, frustration, hope, love, everything they'd experienced together and separately. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The magical connections between them flared blindingly bright, the energy flow suddenly reversing. Instead of being drawn from them into the network, power surged from the nexus orbs into their joined magical cores. Volkov staggered back from the altar, his expression shifting from triumph to alarm. What are you doing? Stop. You'll destabilize the entire system. Harry could feel the raw magic coursing through him, through all of them, amplified by their emotional connection. It was exhilarating and terrifying, power beyond anything he'd experienced before, shared equally between the three of them in perfect balance. The nexus orbs began to vibrate violently, their structured light patterns fracturing as they struggled to contain the reversed energy flow. The ritual circle expanded, then contracted erratically. It's working. Tonks called over the rising magical turbulence. Too well, Fleur warned, her voice strained. We cannot contain this level of power for long. She was right. Harry could feel the magic building to dangerous levels within them, seeking release. If they couldn't direct it safely, the backlash could be devastating. Together, he shouted over the noise. We need to channel it together. Understanding instantly, Tonks and Fleur aligned their magical intent with his. United in purpose as they were in heart, they directed the overwhelming power upward, toward the chamber's open ceiling and the night sky beyond. A column of pure magical energy erupted from the ritual circle, shooting skyward with such force that the mountain itself trembled. The Nexus orbs, unable to maintain cohesion under the reversed flow, shattered spectacularly, not exploding outward, but imploding into themselves, vanishing with soft pops of displaced air. The backlash sent everyone in the chamber flying backward. Harry landed hard against the stone wall, momentarily stunned. Through blurred vision, he saw Volkov scrambling toward the altar, trying desperately to salvage something from the failed ritual. No, the dark wizard cried, genuine anguish in his voice as he beheld the empty spaces where the orbs had been. Decades of research. The only existing nexus points. Harry struggled to his feet, spotting Tonks and Fleur doing the same on opposite sides of the chamber. Despite the magical exhaustion weighing on him, he raised his wand, training it on Volkov. It's over, he stated flatly. Your network, your research, it's finished. Volkov turned to him, and for the first time, the composed facade cracked completely. Fury and desperation warred in his expression. You fool. You have no idea what you've destroyed. The potential, the possibilities, generations of magical advancement, gone. Not gone, Harry corrected. Just not achieved through coercion and control. Tonks had made her way to Harry's side, her wand similarly trained on Volkov. Drop your wand and surrender, she instructed in her official aura voice. There are 24 auras approaching this location as we speak. This last part was a bluff, but a convincing one. For a moment, it seemed Volkov might comply. Then his expression hardened, cold calculation replacing the emotional outburst. I think not, he said quietly. With startling speed, he cast a blasting curse, not at them, but at the chamber ceiling above them. The ancient stone cracked ominously as Volkov turned and fled toward one of the tunnel exits. Massive chunks of rock began to fall as the chamber's structural integrity failed. The whole place is coming down. Tonks shouted, already moving to help a dazed follower who had been left behind. Fleur had reached them now, her wand moving in complex patterns as she cast goblin reinforcement charms on the collapsing ceiling. I can slow it, but not stop it, she called over the thunderous noise. We must leave now. Harry faced a split-second decision, pursue Volkov or ensure everyone's safety. There was no real choice to make. Get everyone out, he instructed, rushing to help another fallen follower. I'll hold the passage open. Working together with seamless coordination born of months of practice, they evacuated the chamber, not just themselves, but Volkov's abandoned followers as well. Harry maintained a shield over the main exit while Tonks and Fleur guided everyone through, the mountain continuing to collapse around them. They emerged into the cool night air just as the tunnel behind them gave way completely, sealing the ancient chamber forever. The mountain peak was now visibly altered, part of its crown missing where their channeled magic had erupted into the sky. Breathing hard, covered in dust and minor injuries, the three of them stood together under the equinox stars. Around them, the subdued followers of Volkov sat or lay where they'd been placed, too exhausted or injured to attempt escape. Volkov? Tonks asked between deep breaths. Harry shook his head. Gone. Probably had an emergency escape route planned. We'll find him, Fleur said with quiet certainty. Eventually. But that was a concern for later. For now, they had survived, prevented the ritual, and preserved their autonomy. Most importantly, they had done it together, their connection proving to be their greatest strength rather than a vulnerability to be exploited. That was some impressive magical work, Harry told them both, genuine admiration in his voice. Redirecting the ritual energy like that. It was your idea, Tonks pointed out with a tired grin. But it required all three of us to execute, Fleur added. A comfortable silence fell between them as they caught their breath and processed what had just happened. The emotional amplification during the ritual had brought their feelings to the surface in a way that couldn't be ignored or misunderstood. Each had felt the other's emotions directly, the depth, the complexity, the absolute genuineness of their connection. So, Tonks finally said, a hint of her usual humor returning. About those declarations of love during a life-threatening magical ritual. Did you mean what you said? Fleur asked Harry directly, her blue eyes serious despite her exhausted state. Harry looked between them, Tonks with her hair fading from battle red to a contented pink, Fleur somehow maintaining her grace even covered in dust and magical residue. His answer came easily, without doubt or hesitation. Every word, he confirmed. I love you both. I'm not sure how that works in the long term, or what it means for the three of us, but I'm not taking it back or choosing between you. Good, Tonks said firmly. Because I meant it too. And I'm pretty sure our French friend did as well. Fleur nodded, a soft smile forming despite their dire circumstances. I did. Though I admit, this is not how I imagined such declarations would occur. When do things ever go as planned around Harry? Tonks asked with a laugh. Fair point, Fleur conceded. The sound of multiple apparition cracks interrupted the moment. Reinforcements had finally arrived, Aurors, Metawizards, and support personnel appearing at the designated coordinates nearby. Reality reasserted itself as they shifted back into professional mode, directing the newcomers, securing prisoners, establishing a perimeter. The personal conversation would have to wait until the official aftermath was handled. But as they worked, a new certainty had taken root between them. Whatever happened next, whatever form their relationship took, the foundation had been established in the most definitive way possible, tested by fire, proven in crisis, and freely chosen by each of them. Dawn was breaking over London when they finally returned to Grimmauld Place. The debriefing had been exhaustive, the medical examinations thorough, the paperwork seemingly endless. But at last, they were released with orders to rest and recover from their magical exertion. Too wired to sleep despite their exhaustion, they gathered in the kitchen. Fleur prepared tea with practiced elegance while Tonks rummaged for anything edible, eventually producing bread and jam with a triumphant flourish. Harry simply sat at the table, content to watch them move around his kitchen with the familiarity of people who belonged there. Robard said we're off duty for at least 3 days, Tonks reported as she set the impromptu meal on the table. Magical exhaustion recovery protocol. The goblins have granted me the same leave, Fleur added, bringing the teapot to the table. They were most interested in my report about the Nexus Orb's implosion. 3 days, Harry mused. Feels strange to not be chasing Volkov after all these months. He'll resurface eventually, Tonks said, spreading jam on a thick slice of bread. But his grand plan is set back years, if not decades. Those Nexus Orbs were unique artifacts. And the ritual itself is now compromised, Fleur pointed out. Our successful resistance creates a precedent that weakens the magical theory behind it. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the simple food remarkably satisfying after their ordeal. When they had finished and the tea was poured, the conversation naturally turned to the subject they'd been postponing. So, Harry began, not entirely sure how to navigate this unprecedented territory. About what happened during the ritual. The part where we saved the world through the power of love? Tonks suggested with a grin. Or the part where we all admitted our feelings while nearly being crushed by a mountain? Both, I suppose, Harry said with a chuckle. Fleur set her teacup down carefully. I believe we have been moving toward this moment for months, she observed. The ritual merely accelerated the process. Forced our hands, Tonks agreed. But in a good way. No more dancing around what we all knew was happening. Harry looked between them, still amazed by the turn his life had taken. So what now? How does this work, the three of us? However we want it to, Tonks said simply. There's no rulebook for this, Harry. We define our own parameters, Fleur elaborated. Based on what feels right for us, not external expectations. And what feels right to you? Harry asked them both. Truly. Tonks and Fleur exchanged a glance, some silent communication passing between them. Being together, Tonks answered first. The three of us, finding our way as a unit. Not always all together every moment, that would be impractical with our work, but committed to each other equally. A true triad, Fleur agreed. Not a primary couple with an addition, but three equal partners in a balanced relationship. The clarity of their vision surprised Harry. You've thought about this. We've discussed it, Fleur admitted. During quiet moments of surveillance this summer, or while you were in meetings with Robards. Without pressuring you or assuming anything, Tonks added quickly. Just, exploring possibilities. And you're both comfortable with sharing? Harry asked, wanting to be absolutely certain. Tonks laughed softly. I'm not exactly known for following conventional paths, Potter. Traditional relationships never quite fit me. And Vila culture has different perspectives on love and commitment than Wizarding Society, Fleur explained. More fluid, less focused on exclusivity and more on the quality of connection. Harry nodded slowly, processing this information. And you too? How do you feel about each other? Again, that glance between them, comfortable, knowing, affectionate. We've grown closer these past months, Fleur said carefully. Working together, sharing concerns about you, finding common ground. What she's politely trying to say, Tonks interjected with characteristic bluntness, is that we've developed feelings for each other too. Different from what we feel for you, but real and important. We are still exploring what that means, Fleur clarified. But it strengthens the triad rather than complicating it. Harry felt a weight lift that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying, the fear that he would eventually be forced to choose between them, potentially hurting someone he cared deeply about. So we try this, he said, decision made. The three of us, together, figuring it out as we go. That's what we've been doing all along, isn't it? Tonks pointed out with a smile. Just without admitting it. True enough, Harry agreed, returning her smile. There will be challenges, Fleur cautioned pragmatically. Practical arrangements, public perception, balancing time and attention. And we'll handle them, Tonks said confidently. Like we handle everything else, as a team. Harry reached out, taking one of each of their hands in his. I love you, he told them again, the words coming easier the second time. Both of you, for exactly who you are. And we love you, they responded in near unison. The sun had fully risen outside, casting warm light through the kitchen windows. After months of intensity, the investigation, the developing relationship, the constant danger, this moment of quiet certainty felt like a gift. We should sleep, Fleur suggested eventually. Magical exhaustion requires proper rest. Together? Tonks asked, the single word carrying layers of meaning. Harry and Fleur both nodded without hesitation. They made their way upstairs, the journey slowed by exhaustion catching up with them now that the adrenaline had faded. In Harry's room, their room, in many ways, they helped each other out of dust-covered clothes and into comfortable sleepwear. There was nothing sexual about it, merely intimate care between people who had fought together, faced death together, and chosen each other with clear hearts. That would come later, when they had recovered and could explore that aspect of their relationship with the attention it deserved. For now, they simply arranged themselves in the bed that had gradually adapted to accommodate three people over the summer months. Harry in the middle as usual, Tonks curled against his left side, Fleur on his right. Their positioning had become natural, comfortable, each finding their place in relation to the others. Sleep well, Harry murmured, already drifting off. You too, Tonks replied drowsily, her hair fading to its natural brown as sleep claimed her. Ah demain, Fleur whispered. To tomorrow. As they slept, their magical cores gradually replenished, strengthened rather than depleted by their proximity to each other. The connection that Volkov had tried to exploit for his network remained, but transformed, a bond of their own making, under their control, limited to just the three of them. A triad of power, of balance, of love freely given and received. Unconventional, perhaps, but undeniably right for them. 6 months later the spring air was crisp and clean as Harry made his way through Diagon Alley, nodding occasionally to people who recognized him. After years of fame, he developed the ability to acknowledge greetings without encouraging extended conversations, a necessary skill for someone who valued his privacy. He stopped at Flourish and Blots to pick up a special order, a rare French magical theory text for Fleur's upcoming presentation to the International Confederation of Wizards. Next, he visited Quality Quidditch supplies for the custom broom maintenance kit he'd ordered for Tonks' birthday. Their relationship had settled into a comfortable rhythm over the past 6 months. They maintained separate professional identities, Harry leading the Auror Special Task Force, Tonks working primarily with the investigative division, and Fleur continuing her rise through Gringotts' security hierarchy. But their personal lives had fully intertwined, with Grimmauld Place becoming their shared home. The arrangement wasn't without challenges. Scheduling could be complicated with 3 demanding careers. Occasional jealousy or insecurity still surfaced, requiring honest communication to resolve. And while they kept their relationship private, the wizarding world's rumor mill inevitably generated speculation about the unusual living arrangement of 3 high-profile magical professionals. But the benefits far outweighed the complications. Each brought different strengths to the partnership, Tonks' adaptability and direct approach, Fleur's thoughtfulness and attention to detail, Harry's leadership and protective instincts. Together, they created a balance that felt more complete than any conventional relationship could have offered them. Volkov remained at large, his network disrupted but not destroyed. Intelligence suggested he was rebuilding in Eastern Europe, developing new approaches to his magical theory. The threat remained, but it had receded to manageable proportions, monitored by international magical law enforcement. Harry checked his watch, nearly time to meet Tonks and Fleur at the Leaky Cauldron for dinner. As he turned toward the pub, he caught sight of a familiar redhead approaching with a broad grin. "Harry. Just the man I was hoping to run into," Ron called, weaving through the crowd. "Ron," Harry greeted warmly, clasping his friend's hand. "Didn't know you were back in London." "Just got in this morning," Ron confirmed. "Hermione's presenting at some magical law conference tomorrow, but we came early to catch up with everyone." Ron and Hermione had been the first people they'd told about their unconventional relationship, followed by select friends who could be trusted with the information. To Harry's relief, after the initial surprise, most had been supportive or at least accepting. "We're having dinner at the Leaky," Harry told him. "You and Hermione should join us." "Sounds brilliant," Ron agreed easily. "Hermione's finishing up some presentation notes at the hotel. I'll grab her and meet you there." As Ron headed off, Harry continued to the pub, finding Tonks already at their usual corner table. Her hair was a cheerful violet today, matching the spring flowers blooming throughout London. "There you are," she greeted with a smile. "Successful shopping?" Harry placed the wrapped packages on the table. "Mission accomplished." "Where's Fleur?" "Running late," Tonks reported. "Last-minute meeting with the Goblin Council. Said she'd be here by 7. I ran into Ron," Harry told her as he sat down. "He and Hermione are joining us." "Excellent," Tonks said, brightening further. "I've been wanting to tell them about the cottage." The cottage was their latest project, a small property on the Cornwall coast they'd purchased together as a weekend retreat. A place away from London and their demanding careers, where they could simply be together without the pressures of the wizarding world's attention. "Any word on the Jensen case?" Harry asked, referring to a smuggling operation Tonks had been investigating. She shook her head. "Still gathering evidence. These types are careful, learn from Volkov's mistakes." The conversation flowed easily between work and personal matters as they waited for the others. When Fleur arrived, slightly breathless and apologetic for her tardiness, Harry felt the familiar warmth that her presence always brought. She greeted Tonks with a quick kiss on the cheek, then did the same for Harry before sitting beside him. "The goblins send their regards," she said dryly. "Along with 17 new security protocols they want implemented by next week." "Sounds delightful," Tonks teased. "Almost as fun as the paperwork Robards dumped on my desk this morning." "At least the cottage will be ready this weekend," Harry reminded them. 3 days of no work, no interruptions. "Just sea air and peace," Fleur said with evident anticipation. "And that enormous bed we bought," Tonks added with a mischievous grin that made both Harry and Fleur laugh. Ron and Hermione arrived shortly after, completing their dinner party. The conversation expanded to include updates on Hermione's work in magical law reform, Ron's adventures in the joke shop business with George, and news of their extended friend circle. To an outside observer, it might have appeared to be simply a gathering of close friends. But Harry, watching Tonks laugh at one of Ron's stories while Fleur discussed legal theory with Hermione, knew it was so much more. It was family, in the truest sense, not defined by blood or convention, but by choice and commitment. Later that night, after dinner and drinks and the comfortable camaraderie of good friends, the three of them returned to Grimmauld Place. The house had transformed over the past months, incorporating elements that reflected each of them, Tonks' colorful, slightly chaotic additions, Fleur's elegant touches, Harry's practical comforts. In their shared bedroom, they prepared for sleep with the easy routine of people who knew each other's habits intimately. Tonks claimed the first shower as usual, while Fleur organized her work materials for the next day and Harry checked the house wards, a security habit he'd never quite abandoned. When they finally settled into bed, it was with the contented exhaustion of busy people who had found their sanctuary in each other. Tonks curled against Harry's left side as always, her hair shifting to its natural brown. Fleur lay on his right, one hand resting lightly on his chest, the other extended to maintain contact with Tonks. "I love you," Harry told them both, the words now a familiar and cherished part of their daily ritual. "Love you too," Tonks murmured sleepily. "Je vous aime," Fleur added softly. As sleep claimed them, their magical cores resonated in the subtle harmony they discovered during the confrontation with Volkov. Not a forced network or artificial connection, but a natural affinity strengthened by choice and love. In a world still recovering from dark magic, still facing threats like Volkov and his ilk, they had found something rare and precious, a balance uniquely their own, a love that defied conventional boundaries, and a home in each other that no force, magical or mundane, could truly threaten. Different paths had led them to this unexpected destination. Different needs had drawn them together. Different qualities had made each essential to the others. But in their differences, they had found a harmony that made them stronger together than they could ever have been apart. A metamorphmagus who could be anyone but chose to be herself. A part Vila who had proven her worth beyond her heritage. A chosen one who had finally chosen his own path. 3 distinct individuals who had become, in the truest sense, a family. And in the quiet darkness of Grimmauld Place, with the future stretching before them full of both challenges and possibilities, that was more than enough. It was everything. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.